Night, the moon illuminates the Gothic castle, around which birds circle and snowflakes fall, creating a mysterious atmosphere. He breathes heavily and acknowledges his opponent's skill as the two lie unconscious on the ground next to a broken helmet. He stands in the ruined hall, watching the appearance of a hostile creature with a huge sword and a dark aura. Demon Lord Farza, with horns and glowing eyes, prepares for battle, demonstrating his might and fearsome strength. He smiles with a sly smile, making a sound similar to laughter or mockery. He declares with determination that their era will end today, preparing to attack with sword in hand. He advances powerfully, activating the 12th form of the Empiric sword, surrounded by a fiery aura. He prepares to attack with his sword, and she summons a fire dragon in the air for a powerful blow. He shouts with determination as he takes action, raising his weapon to attack. He looks at the holographic screen with surprise and anxiety, trying to understand what is happening. He furiously declares that the other person is full of flaws, looking straight ahead. He is in a panic and screams, expressing great surprise and fear. He cried out in fear, his eyes wide and covered in sweat. A dark silhouette attacks and the two fall backwards from a powerful blow or blast of light. The image shows an error message that says "failed to clear" on a red background. Two people discuss whether Jaiwoo is playing the game and how to wake him up with a sunny building in the background. He stands in a room with scattered socks, and another, surprised, notices the glowing screen. He holds the lighter tensely, sweating and looking back at the dark figure with a red light for an eye behind him. He, with a brightly glowing eye, accuses another of disconnecting the Ethernet cable, holding him by the collar, and the other, in a panic, tries to justify himself. One man screams for someone to stop another who is furiously preparing to attack, while a third stands in shock and a fourth lies on the floor. He grabbed the other one by the hand and holds him with force, causing him to feel fear and tension against the red, ominous background. He suddenly grabbed the other one from behind, causing him to become frightened and freeze in shock. He works with concentration, while a woman behind him encourages him with words, and in his thoughts he hears the phrase about Hannum's brain and the money goblin. He holds stacks of money with a smile, his jewelry sparkling, and she stands behind him, watching him with interest. He clenches his fist and speaks decisively, while the other laughs and supports the beaten man with bruises and a scar on his face. Two men are in a room with large windows and a sign above them that says, "How trivial." A green-skinned woman with red eyes stands in front of a fire-breathing dragon, and above them shines the inscription, "Savior of Humanity." He fights a huge monster while she summons magic to support him in the battle. He runs through the grass between the rocks, thinking about how he's never even read a picture book, and imagines a single-player RPG with a huge open world. The warrior protects himself with a shield from the dragon's fiery breath, and the mage prepares to attack with a staff surrounded by magical energy. He releases a powerful energy blast with fury in his eyes, surrounded by glowing sparks and smoke. Two women with horns and pointed ears stand among roses, one looking thoughtfully into the distance, and the other smiling and talking about beautiful characters of different kinds. She looks forward thoughtfully, surrounded by roses, and says that their stories captivated her. The king calls for a halt with a smile, and the warrior in armor prepares to attack with determination. He, sitting on his knees, reaches out his hand to the other and says that before he only cared about money, but now he has changed. The young man happily exclaimed that someone had returned, while two men smiled and showed off a large IOU with the inscription FLEX. He smiles with a slight enigma, looking forward, creating an atmosphere of mystery and confidence. He lies on the floor and asks if they can treat him like this. He smiles with a dark expression, creating an ominous atmosphere. A man plays golf, another runs two businesses secretly, and a third slams a fan of VTubers who performs with a microphone. He looms over the other with a sinister smile, making a frightening sound, while the two men behind him express shock and fear. He shouts and points his finger at another, clearly accusing him of something serious. He said "N" in surprise, and the other one, trembling, began to justify himself. He reaches out to the flower with effort, trying to reach it despite the tension and fatigue. He hides his face behind a rock, watching the approaching fire-breathing dragon against the burning sky. He reads the scroll with concentration, not noticing how a flying creature with red eyes and sharp teeth attacks him from behind. He types quickly on a keyboard at a computer in a darkened room. He reads documents carefully while sitting at a table in a lighted room. The image shows a sheet with the amounts of money withdrawn and remaining in Korean currency against a night sky with lightning and flashes. He reads something on his tablet with tension and a slight smile, bright flashes of light sparkling around him. He listens intently as someone calls him Hanam's problem solver named Han Jae-woo. He works intently on the device while three men in the back argue and try to restrain each other. He looks ahead with confidence, smiling against the backdrop of an orange sunset and flying sparks. Three warriors, including a man with a sword, watch the sunset over the sea as they prepare for the test ahead. He tries to stop a man with a tail who is yelling at another man, while a third man stands nearby, observing the situation. He carefully opens the door and sighs with relief. He turns and looks back with a serious expression on his face. He stands by the window and looks at his reflection, touching the glass with his hand. The image shows the startup process with the word starting against a background of abstract blue and white rectangles. Transparent blue rectangles float against a blue sky with clouds and a glowing sun, creating an atmosphere of digital space. Against the backdrop of a cathedral, two children run towards a man while two women stand nearby, watching what is happening. He realized he'd received a 22-hour reprieve from his death sentence and admitted he had blacked out for the duration. He exclaims that he doesn't know how to make money, and another person nearby expresses surprise. He reacted in surprise, saying to himself, "What?" and looked wary. The image shows part of a figure with flowing white hair against a background of glowing blue and purple rectangles. He quickly runs down a corridor surrounded by glowing blue particles. He, standing at the table, asked the stranger who she was. She introduced herself as Aquila and declared herself the game master of the savior of mankind. He laughs and raises his finger, expressing surprise and disbelief. She smiles and gives a peace sign, saying that judging a book by its cover is her preference. He laughs and says he wouldn't believe it if he just showed up out of nowhere. He snaps his fingers, creating a bright flash of energy. He said in surprise, "9?" Component placement, looking at the man lying on the ground with a box in his hands. She shows off a glowing ball on her finger as he watches her in a room with tall windows and sunbeams. The man with the book asked in surprise if this was a time-stopping spell. She's panicking and trying to catch the fallen bread, while he stands behind her and assesses the situation as a high-level skill. He explains that it's not a skill, but he just temporarily disabled the server. He looks at her in surprise, and she asks with a smile if he believes her now. She told him about a new event for the 7th anniversary and asked if he wanted to know about it, to which he asked again in surprise about the event. She happily announces the launch of a new world and calls on you to be the first to complete the game in it as a new character. He asked with a grin if his interlocutor had gone crazy, reminding him that the reward would be 25 billion. She asks with a smile if this scares the interlocutor. With fiery eyes and a wicked smile, he demonstrates determination and inner strength. She smiles and says that everything will be different now, looking straight ahead against the flickering light. She holds up a glowing object and explains that these are clues to reaching the true end. He remains silent with surprise and uncertainty, trying to understand what is happening around him. The hand trembles, expressing tension or fear at the moment of action. He offers to try it right now, promising a free gift while a glowing object hovers above his hand. He is shocked by the huge amount of money that Aquila transferred to his account and considers it madness. She happily flashes a victory sign in front of a leaderboard with players' names and scores. He looks at the glowing holographic screen with delight, thinking about the incredible possibilities before him. He clenches his fist and thinks confidently about the upcoming event, feeling excitement and determination. The image shows a sound or effect that conveys a sharp or sudden noise with no visible characters. He enthusiastically declared that he would be a fool to refuse such an event. He says resolutely that he will try while yellow flowers are falling around him. He said with a smile that he would send her away immediately, and she stood listening to him against the backdrop of a bright room with furniture. She looks forward with a mysterious expression and repeats incomprehensible words as if trying to remember or convey something. He watches the glowing ring and the hovering dagger in space, concentrating on speaking the words. She floats in a glow with wings, feathers fall around her, and a cosmic image appears above her with the inscription, Installation. In a temple, two nuns are talking while a man and two other people are surrounded by glowing digital streams. Against the backdrop of space with a planet, glowing feathers slowly fall among blue glowing lines and squares. He stands in front of a glowing door that has appeared on the rocky surface and prepares to enter it. He explains that this door will lead to a new world, pointing to a glowing portal in front of them. He answers with surprise and slight anxiety. «Yep!» Зрение, и она говорит с ним спокойно против фона звездного неба. He stands by the door, illuminated by bright light, and lets out a quiet sigh. He opens the door, from which a blinding light shines brightly. He pointed his finger confidently and called loudly for Aquila. He opens the doors, letting in bright light and stepping towards the truth. She smiles and admits that she forgot to say something. She smiles and says that he will die in real life too, against the backdrop of cracks and red writing. He said, "Whoa," in surprise and bewilderment, looking at something brightly lit in front of him. A loud explosion with a boom effect and colorful stars around occurs against the sky. Someone screams loudly as they fall from a great height through the forest. Dark silhouettes fly quickly against the backdrop of a green forest, accompanied by the sounds of the wind and the rustling of leaves. It falls from a great height to the ground, creating a strong explosion and lifting leaves around. He is surprised by the pain in the game and suspects that the girl is involved in this. She smiles with a mysterious expression, and in her mind, one doubts whether she was serious. He clenches his fist on the grass and cries out Aquila's name with alarm. He decides to take action with fury in his eyes, telling himself that he can handle this. Against the backdrop of a sky with clouds, a harsh insult expressing anger or aggression is written in large letters. The game starts and he presses a button to start the process. Aquila is an AI who created a VR game and is considered a god in the world of saving humanity. She loves cute things and is unpredictable in her thoughts. The image shows text about a VR game where the player fights demons to save an empire, and the community competes to see who can reach a happy ending first. He, leaning on a stick, walks with difficulty through the forest and says that he is very thirsty. He exclaimed with alarm in his voice about the appearance of the status window, tightly clutching the wooden stick. He looks nervously at the screen with the 320 and 33 readings, feeling tension and excitement. He expresses despair with a bright red eye, asking how he can achieve a happy ending. The image shows a close-up of a drop of water falling into a pond, causing ripples on the surface. He shouts, "Yes!" with determination and prepares to take action with his weapon in hand. Laughter echoes against the backdrop of the forest and river, and he thanks fate for accidentally reading Bear Grylls' book on survival. He holds the wooden stick tightly with shining eyes and tears of joy, experiencing strong emotions and excitement. He does push-ups by the water and green numbers +1 appear above him, showing his strength growth. She plays with her long hair against the blue sky, creating a sense of lightness and calm. She stands, covered with cloth, against a backdrop of rainbows and fog. She stands in a hot spring, surrounded by steam under a rainbow and trees. He is stunned and loses 1 HP, thinking to himself who this person is. She feels pain and is surprised by the appearance of a red spot on her shoulder. He exclaimed in amazement, expressing strong emotions through his wide-open eye. He screams in shock that he thought the game was the full version when the screen in front of him suddenly shatters. He sits on the ground, surrounded by 4 women in hats, one of whom says you have to pay to see the rest. He says something with fear and saliva on his lips, clearly in a state of stress or shock. He suddenly got up on his knees and the other one lies on the floor, clearly shocked and unable to get up. He lies on the floor, breathing heavily and groaning in pain. He lies on the floor, and women in witch hats mock him, one of them calling him a depraved tomboy. She looks at the lying man with a smile, who looks scared and tense. A woman in a hat demands to know the amount, while 2 men and several women in hats watch her in a room with skulls and a chest. He said with a grin that nothing had happened, and the other listened to him with caution. He introduced himself as Hunter, a little nervous in front of his interlocutor. He breathes heavily and says, "Ah," while in the distance, silhouettes of several women in the forest can be seen against the moon. He asked with a grin if he was really there, and his interlocutor answered with uncertainty. He, tied with ropes, tries to reach for the dagger, and another man expresses dissatisfaction with what is happening. He says with a smile that this is his specialty, kneeling next to another man in the room. He answers with determination in his eyes that, of course, he understands and agrees. He looks at the 3 witches and claims that he was the one who wrote how to defeat them. He plays the piano with a grin and intensity, telling us that it took him 3 whole days to do it. Against a backdrop of fire and darkness, 3 characters are presented, Gunda in a hat, Kaldura with 3 eyes, and a smiling Aldaida in a black hat and blindfold. A girl with red hair addresses Fugal, while another with silver hair watches her with a slight smile. Several figures in hats stand against a sunset backdrop with many skulls lying in front of them, and it is said that thousands have died trying to beat these bosses. She laughs at the other one, who looks annoyed, and he grins at how they're actually quite a disorganized group. He looks forward with a greedy expression on his face, and the other person notices with bewilderment that he has a strange expression on his face. She said that he was provoking Fugul, to which he responded with surprise. He smiles at the two women in hats, one of whom stands with her hands on her hips and the other with her arms crossed, watching him. She looks forward and says something with a slight smile on her face. She asks defiantly who will kill whom, and they note that the provocation on Fugul worked. He asks with surprise and doubt whether the interlocutor is really speaking seriously. She screams furiously, emitting dark energy, preparing to attack or defend in a tense situation. She says with a grin that her provocation on Hejuju worked and offers to take something. She explains with a smile why Juju made the acid bomb. She listens to the question with concern, but she has a big appetite, as indicated in the note. She laughs an evil laugh, demonstrating confidence and strength. She explains why he was rude. He yells at her to let go of his hair, and a third character remarks that Juju is always rude. He screams, "Strike! Strike!" with a distorted face, while the other reacts with alarm to the news that 5 of Havel's witches have been successfully provoked. One of the girls thinks their title might mean teamwork, while the other yanks her hair in anger. One of the witches encourages the other, saying, "Come on, come on!" Зрение, когда они не на экране, они отметили, что у них нет командной работы вообще. A woman in a sorcerer's hat conjures up magic as 3 ghostly figures in similar hats and clothing appear around her. On the battlefield, the fighters use magical powers and snakes, explaining that this is why they were able to kill thousands of enemies. He thought it would be so easy to make them fight each other while 2 women fought and 2 watched. One of them suggests that Mr. Rude take advantage of the moment to escape, and he in response admits that he is indeed an unusual person. He looks at the 2 girls who laugh and run away, and below he says the word "but." He says the word "hello" with a tired look. The image shows the sound of an impact or collision, conveying the intensity of the action without visible characters. He shouts, "Hiya!" with a furious grin as he attacks the 2 women, one of whom tries to defend herself in horror. 3 people fall down, one of them with a tense expression on his face, and the other 2 look scared and try to hold on. 5 people panic and try to escape from the liquid, screaming and raising their hands up. He points forward enthusiastically, while a man with long hair and a beard looks at him with concern. He smirked and called the witches stupid, noting that despite this, they give a lot of experience, while the screen showed that Aldaida and Hejuju had taken damage. He strikes sharply, creating a sense of rapid movement and power. He tries to run away, but Fugula's snake wraps itself around him, restricting his movement, and someone is heard calling him a cunning man. He smiles with an eye patch and holds out his hand as if he's about to use magic or power. He is adamant that he will not die alone. He lies on the ground and gets angry when the snake tries to bite him, and he orders it to leave him alone. He panicked and realized that his character was now very weak and exclaimed out loud about it. He shouts with rage and determination, expressing strong emotions. A man with determination in his eyes furiously strikes his sword, letting out a loud cry. He was surprised to notice a snake suddenly appearing in front of him and tried to dodge its attack. He threatens the seated man with a sword, who in response looks scared and tense. He knelt down in front of the other man, breathing heavily, and said he couldn't hold back any longer. He grips the bow tightly and information about its stats appears: attack 15 and range 30. He draws his bow and replies that he can shoot a little. He swings his sword upward, directing energy towards a group of 5 girls sitting on a glowing circle in the air. 3 characters are in a glowing cauldron when a massive explosion sends rocks flying around them. One looks scared and tense, and the other one is in shock as if something unexpected happened. She is in a panic and screams with horror on her face, expressing intense fear and shock at what is happening. He screams in rage as he notices green tentacles approaching him. Several women in hot water retreat in fear from the approaching green slime. Several girls watch in shock as a green creature approaches a large yellow object. The explosion engulfs the forest, creating a pillar of fire and destroying the surrounding nature. 2 men look at a devastated landscape filled with smoke and fire. A loud sound is heard, creating a tense atmosphere. He was hit by debris and lost 1 health, which was reflected in the game notification. He asked if they had managed to catch the target, and the other one reacted to the question with fear. An achievement message appears on the screen stating that these witches are nothing. The player is informed of the victory over 5 witches from Havel Forest, Hejuju, Fugul, Kaldura, Aldaida, and Gunda. He said they had caught the target, addressing a man with long hair against the backdrop of a destroyed building. He rejoices at his low-level luck and says that now all he has to do is get this. He thanks the other for saving him, saying that he was doomed, and the other confirms that he really did save him. He smiles and offers a gift as a token of gratitude, asking if the other would like to accept it, with a notification appearing that he has received red dragon fruits. He asks in surprise if he is actually being given these items, and notes that he does not remember this from his previous playthrough. He smiles and thanks, showing his palm from which light comes. He screams, holding his head, and the other one asks in surprise what happened. He screams, feeling that he has now become a dragonbone with great power, and his energy flares brightly around him. He is surprised to see his stats increase dramatically and considers himself a very lucky regular player. He looks into the distance with a slight smile on his face, enjoying the moment under the clear sky. He stands there with his cheeks full, trying to hide something, while another person looks at him. He reaches out and asks the man sitting there if he is interested in monster hunting. He keeps silent with his cheeks full, expressing confusion or awkwardness. A message has appeared about the unlocking of the romance line with the monster hunter. A young hero prepares to battle a legion of darkness made up of demons and monsters that threaten the world if the defenders disappear. A man with a sword asks a man sitting on the ground if he is interested in hunting monsters. He remains silent, thoughtful, his lips pressed together as if trying to hold back emotions or words. He eats with pleasure, and the other one watches him with surprise. He raised his hand to stop his interlocutor and said that there was no point in continuing. He thought about it and decided that this might be an opportunity. He reflects on the fact that he has no class and the experience he has accumulated will disappear in a month if he does not do something about it. He holds up 3 fingers and says there are 3 months left, while another stands in the forest with a sword and listens. He confidently gives the victory sign, smiling and looking ahead against the backdrop of trees. He turns around with a smile and starts talking, creating a tense atmosphere in the forest. 2 men walk along a forest path at night, surrounded by dark trees and falling petals. He began to speak, climbing up the rocks by the river, while the other followed him attentively through the forest. He says he'll start in 30 minutes, standing with his back to another man in the woods. He reflects on the monster tracking skill from the hunter skill tree and notes the rapid progress. He confidently says that he has explored this forest countless times, standing on the rocks in the river in front of another man. He squeezed his hand sharply, making a sound that expressed tension or determination. He rushes forward furiously, claiming that he remembers everything down to the smallest detail. He jumps among the dense trees, noticing that their density is confusing, and poisonous spores from scattered toxic mushrooms are spreading around. He lies in the shade of a tree and thinks that ferocious animals are more dangerous than witches. He attacks with determination, thinking that most of it has already been imprinted in his mind, and with the red dragon, his physical abilities are almost at their limit. He said with confidence that he was not easy to find, showing determination and a sly smile in the rain. He looks forward with a tense smile and a sweaty face, as if preparing for a difficult situation or test. Someone hiding behind the trees cheerfully says, "Peekaboo." He looks down in horror, his face distorted with fear and shock against the glowing sky and trees. He looks anxiously at the man standing in front of him, who has raised his hand, preparing for action. He smiles and says thoughtfully that if he can't win, then no one can. He asked in surprise how it was done, and the other one, sitting opposite, began to say, "Well, well." He smiled thoughtfully and said that everything starts with curiosity. One of them offered to take their best shot while they were walking along a forest path. A message has appeared about the completion of the quest The Hunter's Hazing and the update of the new quest Hunter's Trial. He received the class Monster Hunter and the skill Herbalism. One gained the skill Intermediate Swordsmanship, and the other learned the skill Survival. The character has received the skill of Shooting a Musket, which is confirmed by the message that appears on the screen. He smiles as he looks at the holographic screen, which shows a message about acquiring the Monster Tracking skill, Level 1. He looks forward with a sinister smile and glowing eyes, creating a tense and threatening atmosphere. Against the backdrop of the sky and trees, no one is visible. The scene is empty and calm. 3 months have passed and someone from the tent makes the sound "oh-ho" against the background of the forest. He asked with interest whether the interlocutor had really mastered everything, expressing admiration for his skills. He smiles and suggests hiding somewhere. One man praised another by patting him on the shoulder and saying that everything was very good. He gives the thumbs up and says everything is great to the other man. He replied with a smile that of course he would fulfill the owner's request. He said with a sinister smile that he was looking forward to it, standing in the dark forest with his eyes glowing brightly. He climbs the rock and says he is glad to meet such a great student late in life. He grips the stone surface tightly, feeling its hardness under his hand. He reaches for the stone with a smile, and a figure with glowing eyes appears behind him. He grabbed the other man's hand tightly, as if trying to hold him back or stop him. He says tensely that he cannot allow anyone to die, despite the danger. He suddenly appears with a hypnotic gaze and says, "Peekaboo," while another one exclaims in shock, "What is this?" He hid behind a tree when another, noticing him, said that he had found him, and he responded by being surprised that only 3 months had passed. He happily found it in the bushes and said that he had finally found it. He says with a smile that he found it, and the other one, sitting in the tree, thinks that he has already mastered the skills that he studied for 5 years. He stands in a deep cave, lighting the way and looking around carefully, surrounded by shimmering fragments and fog. He answers with a grin that this is definitely not the case, despite his interlocutor's assumption. He realizes that he is in the lair of a hellhound. He stands on the edge with a tense expression, preparing for action in a gloomy environment. He smiles and says something with a mysterious or mocking tone. He looks up in surprise, and the other one smiles, holding his shoulder as loud noises are heard around them. He says something with a grin, looking forward with confidence and audacity. He nods tensely and quietly agrees, feeling anxious and unsure about what is happening. He said in admiration that it was amazing against the backdrop of the trees and the sky. He noted that the student had mastered the skills in 3 months, and he replied that it was thanks to him, to which the mentor replied that it was his talent. He does a 5-hit combo, and someone jokingly says it's all because of him. He holds out his hand with a smile and laughs, telling me that he raised all the levels using his vast experience from hunting witches. He asked with a smile if he had taught his interlocutor about hellhounds, and the other mentally replied that he was the real author of Ecology of Monsters. He laughs and says something while the other one listens with a smile and crossed arms. He says something confidently with a smile, looking to the side. He happily gives the OK sign against a backdrop of bags and stacks of gold coins. He says with a smile that it's wonderful, with the flag waving and other people with guns in the background. He smiled and said that he had a close friend who was a mercenary and suggested discussing it. He thoughtfully noted that the offer was intriguing and that mercenary work was a great way to make quick money. A young man with a sword fights a dragon and a wolf, hoping for luck in meeting someone important. He smiles thoughtfully and reflects on the guardians of this game. He holds a glowing medallion with a star in his hand, preparing to use its power. He excitedly tells the older man that he can now protect himself and others, demonstrating confidence and determination. He happily noted that he had defeated the witches and received a class, and another supported him, saying that he could handle it. He holds the object in his hand with a smile and thinks that with this arrangement, a happy ending may be just around the corner. He looks ahead with surprise and anxiety, as if trying to understand what is happening around him. She shows a glowing object and says that it is the key to the true ending. He presses the exit button, thinking that in this deadly game, you never know when you'll die. He firmly states that he will use all the tension of the situation for his own purposes. He clasps his hands to his face and smiles, radiating a joyful and inspired mood. He asks Aquila with determination in his voice to wait for him. He vows to achieve the true end as he watches the other go into the forest. The scroll announces the completion of the hidden quest, Trial of the Hunter. Next to it, there's a stamp with a signature. A loud scream is heard against the backdrop of space with planets, expressing strong emotions or pain. She sits on a chair and smiles shyly, covering her face with her hand. She smiles and says she was following him. He sits in a chair on the surface of space, watching a pair of feet in high heels surrounded by glowing symbols. She walks confidently on the ground, making footstep sounds and surrounded by a light glowing smoke. She asked him with a smile if he was in love with this man or something like that. She stands against a backdrop of a glowing pattern and pronounces the word Valfurga. She sits on a throne under the starry sky and smiles mysteriously, holding her hand to her face in a thoughtful pose. She spoke the name Aquila and stated that she was a god and therefore would not look at the person she was supposed to protect. Thus, she answers the question with a smile and a sly tone in her voice, expressing readiness or consent, sitting on a patterned chair under the starry sky. She looks away thoughtfully, holding back her emotions against the backdrop of the starry sky. She reproaches her interlocutor for being too serious and says that he used to be more cheerful. She touched the back of the chair and replied that his debt had been repaid many years ago. She is surprised that he continues to work even though he has already been paid, and she confirms this with a smile. She asks him to look at her with a smile and tenderness, looking at her interlocutor against the backdrop of the starry sky. He enthusiastically says that life is full of energy, clenching his fist in a sign of determination. She thinks the situation is terrible, but she smiles and starts asking a question. She looks at the TV and asks if this is part of someone's plan. She looks down thoughtfully against the backdrop of the starry sky, as if pondering something important. She thoughtfully said, looking at the starry sky. She sits on a chair, laughing and crossing her legs in a relaxed manner, expressing confidence and pleasure. She said with a smile on her face that he looked more like a promising talent. She smiles with a mysterious expression, her eyes glow purple, and she quietly says, "Noah." He moves forward confidently, looking around carefully in the forest. He smiles, holding a holographic message in front of him, warning that experience points from monsters or quests will disappear after a month if not used. He fell to the ground in the forest and felt completely exhausted. He sits on the ground near the trees and looks back, preparing to say something. He, leaning on his knees, says that it is time to move, despite the fatigue and trembling in his body. The image shows a view of a walled city surrounded by forest and mountains in the background, with no visible characters. He stands with his back turned and claims that something is right in front of him. Two waitresses in a tavern greet a visitor and offer assistance, informing him that he has entered Francois's tavern. He sheepishly admitted that he was looking for someone, and she replied that she would show him something first. A group of men have a fun time in a tavern, enjoying drinks, conversation, and the aroma of delicious food. He thinks that this is where he can get information about the mercenary corps, while there are tables with food and drinks around. In a tavern, several men are drinking and talking merrily, and behind them stand three people pondering the fact that people talk more when they are in a good mood. She laughs, hugging his hand. He's embarrassed and nervous, and another girl in a maid uniform smiles, watching them. He smiles with a slight blush and seems pleased, letting out a quiet laugh. He stands in a tavern, surrounded by tense patrons and two waitresses who look worried. She trembles and hides behind him, and he asks in surprise what is happening. She is shaking and has difficulty saying that her boyfriend. He, trembling and holding a stick in his hands, turns to the frightened hero, who screams and covers his face with his hands. Two men discuss how one could barely kill a slug and how catching a rat is too difficult for him, while morale in the tavern has dropped. He stands with his back turned and mentally asks who Rudd introduced to him. She quickly pushes him and says that someone should be arriving any minute, and he turns around in surprise. He pushes the other one sharply, causing him to become frightened and tense. He asks with doubt and tension, addressing another person, not understanding what was meant. He introduced himself as Rabes Chalitz with a menacing expression and glowing eyes. He stands with his back to the crowd, surrounded by a gloomy atmosphere and tense anticipation. Someone says, "Huh?" in surprise, holding up a gold medallion with a star on it against a red wall. He asks in surprise when the other one managed to do something, and he begins to explain. He speaks with a grin to another who looks at him with tension in the room. He is alarmed to realize that he will not be able to cope with the task and internally prepares for the worst. He smiles with a sinister glint in his eyes and says something with confidence and menace. They walk down the street and he explains that he is a companion caught up in the war between the Elector Prince and the forces of Pezamut, to which the other confirms his guess. He thinks that although the situation is similar to conscription, it is actually a great opportunity as long as the other one is laughing next to him. He reflects on the fact that the Electoral Prince is the keeper of this game. He notices one of the Finger's electors among a group of armored men and thinks of him as an important figure. He thinks that through this person he can get information about other guardians. The image shows a close-up of a pipe making a loud sound against the sky. He grabbed the other one by the neck, showing a malicious smile, while the other one was gasping for breath and looked depressed. Two men watch as a masked knight on horseback and his armored guards prepare for an event in a medieval town square. He said he would fit right in with that group while two armored knights stood next to a spear. Two men look away. One of them is surprised to think that everything turned out differently than he expected and remembers that he was on the opposite side before. The image shows the Elector Prince, a guard, and someone thinks he looks like a villain. He looks startled as another man places his hand on his shoulder with a questioning expression. He asks with surprise and alarm if she has appeared here. She is wearing a helmet with wings and long blonde hair, standing against the backdrop of a building, and the sound of approaching footsteps can be heard. He holds the reins, directing the horse, which runs quickly along the road. He is in armor with long blonde hair and asks in surprise if Dame Walpurgis has appeared here. He looks thoughtfully into the distance under the bright sky, lost in his thoughts. He asks with confidence if he is not mistaken in his statement. She, in armor with a closed helmet, quietly said, "Ah," expressing surprise or confusion. He called her Grace, and she remained silent, looking down. He looks at the departing knights, who confirm their consent with the word yes. He remembers that she was his companion in previous playthroughs while fighting an armored enemy. He reflects on the fact that he couldn't save her in any of the options. He stands before a huge monster with a toothy mouth, while below him lies an unconscious knight with a sword stuck in the ground next to him. He gritted his teeth and remembered with bitterness that everything always ended the same way. The man looks doubtfully at the young man, who is silent, hiding his eyes under his bangs. She firmly states that she is ready to risk her life for her goal. He is determined to reach the end where she lives. Two men with swords fight in the square, while two others watch and walk towards each other at the steps. Two people fight with swords, while a third one watches from next to throwing targets. Four men fight with swords in the street. Two of them look tense, while the other two actively attack and defend themselves. He thinks with tension and surprise that the situation is very serious and asks himself if this applies to the Marine Corps. He happily announced that everything was already starting when they entered the training ground of the Rebs-Chalt's mercenaries, and the other reacted with surprise. He says with a smile that there is money at stake too. He laughs, picking up a bag of money as two men watch, and the man on the ground talks about pride and money. He thinks that he needs to contact the Electoral Prince and agrees to this out loud. He grabbed the other by the shoulders and said in a threatening voice that he would not tolerate weakness. One shouts with aggression, and the other responds with worry and asks what his opinion is. He, with glasses and a blond man with light hair, watches a man with muscles, stops another man who is in a panic, and behind him stands a man with a sword. Three men shout enthusiastically, and one declares that he will go first. He insists with a smile on his face that he must be the first. Two men with swords prepare to fight while others watch and support them, expressing confidence and excitement. Max introduced himself and challenged to a duel, and his companions supported him with enthusiasm. He stands there embarrassed while others laugh and point at him, thinking that his body is getting thousands of likes on StarPick. The crowd cheers and orders the fight to begin as two men with swords prepare to fight. A man with a sword rushes furiously at another man, screaming, while the other man stands in front of him, preparing to attack. The image shows a sword flying through the air with great force and speed. Four men look up in surprise, one of them expressing shock and tension. He stands with his sword, watching as the mercenary Max lies unconscious on the ground, and the crowd watches in amazement. He notes with restraint that after eating red dragon fruits, his strength became equal to that of an ogre. He demands an explanation and offers to fight, and the crowd supports him, expressing a desire to join the fight. He tries to hide his excitement with a tense smile and a sweaty face, internally struggling with his emotions. He attacks the enemy with his sword, demonstrating intermediate fencing skills and gaining plus 15 fame. He used the monster bind technique and the enemy was bound, gaining plus 15 fame. He delivers a powerful headbutt to his opponent, gaining plus 15 glory for it. He expresses dissatisfaction and says that the situation is becoming ridiculous, and the other reproaches those present for disgracing themselves in front of the newcomer. A man with a muscular body laughs and sneers as a message appears on the screen that he is being teased by the mercenary Charlotte. He stands tensely in front of a bald man surrounded by a red glow, clearly preparing for a fight or a test. He panics and thinks that the situation is too difficult and decides to immediately leave the game. He is in shock because he cannot log out despite trying to press the log out button. He breathes heavily and thanks Aquila, expressing great excitement and fatigue. He screams furiously that he will never give up and suddenly raises his hand forward. He stands in front of a man who radiates tension and feels anxious as he watches what is happening. He takes a deep breath and decides to take action, realizing that the situation has reached a critical point. He grabs and tears the opponent's clothes with force, demonstrating his determination in battle. A man with a tattoo knocks down another man with a powerful punch, accompanying the action with the words, "Monster Slam." A man fights his opponent, delivering a powerful punch that destroys the floor and knocks down another fighter. He lies on the broken stone floor and marvels at the force of the blow, calling it Monster Slam. He breathes heavily and thinks that the enemy is very heavy, after which a message appears about defeating the mercenary Charlotte and receiving glory. He asked his boss where he found this man, and he was surprised that even Charlotte lost. He says with surprise that he defeated Charlotte and calls him a real monster. He speaks with a grin to a tense young man who is sweating and looking down, and a third person is visible behind them. He tries to push the other away while asking to be given a break, while a clenched fist looms over them. They look in fear at the man with red eyes and a sinister smile who stands in front of them, radiating a threat. He smiles, feeling touched, while the other one wonders doubtfully whether he cares because he is his friend's student. He points and says that he wants the other person to become the new leader of the group for the upcoming battle. He reacted with surprise to the unexpected event, not understanding what was happening around him. 3 warriors in armor with smiles ready for battle, one holding a sword and the other showing a thumbs up. A man in armor stands confidently, while another man smirks as he prepares for battle, showing determination and tension before the fight. He looks at the glowing dagger in surprise and cannot believe what is happening. The scrolls display a message about the completion of the hidden quest, Join the Mercenary Corps, and the update of a new one, Reclaim Harfheim Hill. A young woman with different colored eyes is introduced as Charlotte's younger sister who runs Francois's tavern. In the city of Frankfurt, the Prince Elector is in conflict with Petzemut on the Harfheim Hill. He stands at a crossroads in the forest and looks thoughtfully at 3 roads diverging ahead. 2 armies lined up opposite each other in a deserted valley between rocks, preparing for the upcoming battle. He loudly orders the attack, raising his hand against the backdrop of many spears. Warriors in armor with spears shout and attack quickly, creating a powerful battle onslaught. 2 orcs tensely fight off the many spears aimed at them, preparing to attack. He delivers a powerful blow to a green creature with sharp teeth and yellow eyes. He gritted his teeth and said that they were now on the same side as the troops of the Electoral Prince. He introduced the Demon King Petzemut with a smile and slammed his fist on the table in front of the other man. He says with enthusiasm that he now has the power to change everything. He explains that they will pass through the gap and completely destroy the enemy lines. A knight in dark armor with red eyes stands in front of a group of evil creatures with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. A man with red hair screams furiously and punches the wall, addressing 3 men who listen attentively. He holds a knife in his hand and prepares to attack 2 huge creatures with red eyes and spears that attack him at the same time. He quickly dodges the many sharp projectiles flying, concentrating on what is happening around him. He exclaims in shock that his position as the group's leader is in question. He refuses to be funny, and the other one makes excuses as they fight 2 monsters. He shouts with determination, expressing his intention to seize something. One armored orc shouts bad news to the captain, saying that their spearmen are in trouble. He says something with fury, expressing strong emotions and determination. He abruptly knocks away the object that they were trying to take away and demands that it be given back. He is in armor, looking into the distance through a telescope, observing what is happening on the deserted plain near the rocks. One of them looks through the pipe and says, "Him?" in surprise, while the other watches him tensely from behind. He exclaims in rage, not understanding what is happening, and the 2 knights behind him are also tense and ready to fight. He screams in rage, ordering everyone to be smashed to pieces. The character's eyes suddenly opened, making a kutuk sound, and he began to sweat from the strain. An armored orc shouts about muskets to a group of helmeted warriors with spears. Several armed orcs in helmets stand in formation, preparing for battle. He desperately repels the attacks, defending himself from the projectiles that shatter against the shield. He reflects the blow with a shield that has lost durability while defending against the enemy's attack. He smirks and says that muskets are pathetic without rapid fire and asks if the other knows what a K2 is, explaining the need to rotate the firing ranks. A warrior in armor orders everyone to take aim as he prepares for battle with muskets in hand. He quickly attacks the knights with a shield, parrying their blows and breaking through their defenses. He shouts with determination, ordering the enemies to be torn apart, preparing to attack with his allies. 2 men fight with daggers. One of them shouts a battle cry. He's wearing a helmet with fangs and is horrified that everyone is being defeated because of someone who looks like a shrimp. He is in armor and quickly rushes towards 2 men, one of whom thinks that these creatures are not people, but will not let them take it. A warrior in armor with a red plume holds a flag with a fish skull against a background of sky and mountains. He stands on the battlefield among the fallen orcs and says that this flag carries the proud history of their tribe. He rushes with a shield and a dagger at two armored attackers who are ready to attack him with swords. A loud cry of "Wow!" is heard against the backdrop of a gloomy sky with vertical lines of tension. The image shows a flag fluttering in the wind with a coat of arms and stars against the sky. A group of soldiers raise their fists and spears in the air, expressing fighting spirit and unity before the upcoming battle. He raised his hand with the gun and said that he couldn't let them go. He joyfully exclaimed that he had successfully stolen the war flag and now had to hold out a little longer to receive a military award. Someone wearing a glove blows loudly into a large horn against the backdrop of rocks and a clear sky. One of the fighters urgently informs the group leader about bad news, causing him to become alarmed. He reports that their allies are retreating, and the other one expresses surprise in response. Reinforcements had already appeared in front of them, and someone cursed the situation in despair. He tensely thinks that victory was close and wonders why the opponents suddenly started running away. He suggests simply throwing the flag and running away, while the other one is shocked and outraged by his words. He says tensely that they have already done something, while sweating heavily and gritting his teeth. 4 warriors prepare to fight an advancing army of orcs in armor and with spears. The warriors with spears surrounded the man with the sword, and one of them shouted that they were surrounded. Orc Grand General Kallian stands with his weapon over his shoulder, preparing for battle, radiating confidence and strength. He has bright red eyes and fangs, expressing anger and preparing for action. A warrior in armor with a sword introduced his elite soldiers to a man with dark hair and a companion. He threatens that if anyone comes near, their precious flag will be destroyed, and the other one distrustfully refuses to believe it. With bright red eyes and sharp teeth, it makes a threatening sound against the backdrop of a blazing fire. He tries to intimidate Kallian, but is warned of his failure. 2 orcs with red eyes are tensely preparing for battle, one of them expressing determination, while the other looks worried. He orders everyone to prepare for fire, while another reacts in shock to the advancing army with weapons. An orc with red eyes commands fire while pointing his finger forward. The man in armor deflects multiple attacks while another tensely dodges, covering his head with his hand. He fights back the attack with effort, gritting his teeth and sweating from the strain. He clenches his teeth and thinks about the failure of his attempt at intimidation. He clenched his teeth with tension and anger, sweating and preparing for the upcoming test. Several warriors in armor are repelling an attack of arrows. One of them is deflecting the arrows with his shield with great effort, causing the sounds of a collision. He shouts in rage that the enemy has called out the top general and considers this an unfair tactic. He fights with opponents and thinks that he cannot defeat a monster with his current fame and rank. He clenched his teeth and sweated, clearly feeling fear or great excitement. He panics and asks himself what to do, expressing intense inner turmoil. 3 warriors, including a man with a sword and a woman in a hat, look at a bright, glowing phenomenon ahead. He looks forward with a slight smile, as if anticipating an upcoming event or victory. She clenches her fist with a smile as glass shatters around her, creating an atmosphere of tension and determination. She laughs and says that even in real life he would have dropped dead. He screams in horror. Drops of saliva and sweat are visible on his face, expressing intense fear or shock. One of them warns that they will be completely destroyed, and the other agrees. Both are tense and worried about the situation. He makes a quiet sound with a tense smile and a drop of sweat on his face, expressing inner excitement or tension. He laughs loudly as he falls backwards, while 2 armored men look at him in surprise and a third watches from behind. He grabbed the other man's hand tightly, who made a sound of pain. He is wounded and says there will be no more reinforcements, while the other looks forward with determination, preparing for battle. He blows hard into the horn, trying to give a signal, while he is tense and sweating. A crowd of armed orcs and soldiers gather on the battlefield, preparing for an open-air battle. He orders the other to remain silent and block the bullets as they both prepare to attack. He told Aquila that they were now even, and asked if she would leave him if she had any common sense. He states with determination that he is still a VIP. He screams with fury against the red sky with bright red eyes and large fangs. He and another man watch as a huge warrior with a spear raises his weapon, preparing to attack. He furiously proclaims that before them is the sworn enemy of their people. He looks up with a tense smile as a sharp blade looms over him. He knocks the opponent off their feet with a powerful blow, causing a powerful explosion of energy. He rides a horse, soaring into the sky against the backdrop of bright sun and clouds. He stands with his back to a horde of orcs with spears, who growl menacingly and prepare for battle. A warrior in armor with flowing blonde hair rides on horseback through a crowd of orcs. A group of armored orcs run after a rider on a white unicorn, preparing to attack. The image shows the legs of a running horse raising dust on the dry ground. A knight on horseback raises his sword and calls for no surrender as his allies fight an advancing army of enemies. She is in armor with wings on her helmet and orders the soldiers to raise their swords. An orc stands proudly in front of his army's war flag, symbolizing their history and the valor of their warriors. An orc in armor with a weapon in his hands shouts something decisively, standing among other warriors with spears against the sky. A warrior in armor with a sword stands in front, and behind her a group of soldiers with shields watch her closely. He starts to speak in a helmet with a grill on his face, but his words are not visible. A warrior in armor with a sword quickly attacks an orc, striking from above downwards. A warrior in armor parries a powerful blow from a girl with long blonde hair, causing an explosion and flying debris. He and the other man watch the fight tensely, noting the equality of forces and Walpurgis's strength despite her early stage in history. A warrior with long blonde hair delivers a powerful blow to a huge armored opponent, causing an explosion of energy and destruction around him. He expresses anger and warns of his power with his bright red eyes. An armored warrior delivers a powerful kick to an orc who tries to defend himself. A warrior with long blonde hair delivers a powerful blow to a large green-skinned opponent, causing a large explosion. He is wearing armor with green skin and a white stripe on his head, laughing, leaning on the ground, surrounded by clouds of smoke. A warrior in armor with wings on his helmet holds a sword and expresses admiration, saying that this is incredible. He asks with a sword if they are members of the Walpurgis Sisterhood, and adds that if it is a military order, then it is logical. She raised her sword and declared that she served God with a devoted heart, addressing the warriors gathered around her. He grins with red eyes and fangs and asks if this is really so. A knight in armor with wings on his helmet says it's too late. A clawed hand slams down on the surface, causing an explosion and flying debris. A knight with long blonde hair delivers a powerful sword strike to an orc, causing an explosion and dealing 16 damage. He gives off a sinister laugh with an evil smile and glowing red eyes. He falls hard to the ground, causing an explosion and flying debris. He attacks with fury, raising a huge sword while the silhouette jumps and prepares to strike back. A warrior in armor with a sword quickly attacks a dark figure surrounded by light and energy. He tries to say something with blood coming out of his mouth, and she walks away without turning around. The knight fell to the ground in front of a horde of orcs who were approaching menacingly with weapons in their hands. A warrior in armor with a sword stands in front of a group of armed men ready for battle on an empty platform. A group of warriors retreats, and a man in armor announces the need to retreat, while two people watch the scene with tension. He is surprised to realize that even a powerful commander was destroyed in one blow. A warrior in armor with wings on his helmet stands next to a unicorn, and behind the scenes, they note that this is Dame Walpurgis. The image shows the sound of a gunshot against the backdrop of sky and rocks. A group of 8 people stand in a narrow passageway as a multitude of enemies rapidly approach them from all sides. The knight asks the young man if he is the leader of the mercenaries, to which he looks surprised and tense. She's wearing armor with wings on her helmet and extends her hand, smiling and inviting cooperation. 2 people shaking hands, symbolizing an agreement or alliance against a clear sky. He admitted that he was no longer the voter of steel at this point, addressing the armored woman. He regretfully thinks that he should have been more careful. He looks at her in surprise, and she, raising her hand, explains something against the backdrop of the crowd and ruins. He, turning to the leader, called out loudly to him, standing next to the man in armor under the clear sky. 2 soldiers stand next to each other with contented expressions, one of them holding a torn banner, and their armor shows traces of battle. He fights 2 warriors, one of whom shouts that he is now attacking him. He realizes with fatigue and tension on his face that his authority among the mercenaries has increased. He looks in surprise at the other one, who is silent and trembling after the fight. He screams with joy and relief despite the blood and sweat pouring down his face. He is in armor, smiling calmly, looking at the approaching attack, showing no fear. Someone called out loudly to Charlotte, expressing urgency or alarm. 2 men are surprised when a woman at the door opens her arms, casting a huge shadow on the floor. She screams and trembles tensely, trying to stop or warn something. A muscular man with bandages chews meat in surprise, while a young man at the table watches him with a displeased expression. She quickly asked if he was hurt, and he replied that he was fine, despite the bandages and scars. Man surprised Charlotte is only 15, while another calls him a liar. She angrily puffed out her cheeks and held back tears, expressing her displeasure and resentment. A little girl blames a man for Charlotte's injury and demands to pay for the treatment, while others at the table react to the situation and a waitress takes the order. She asked him in surprise what was going on while a muscular man with a bandage on his face watched from behind. A man with a raised fist supports a man sitting at a table, and a girl tries to stop a man with a bandage on his face while others watch and laugh. He laughs and admits that the situation seems a little awkward to him. He watches from behind his helmet as two men prepare for battle, while others around him support and encourage them. He smiles with a blush on his cheeks and a bandage on his face, expressing joy and slight surprise. She breathes heavily in full armor, trying to regain her strength after the intense battle. Two men on horseback ride into a camp of tents where several people stand and sit watching their appearance. The knight on horseback says he understands, and the young man with a bandage on his face reacts to his words with surprise. He says on horseback that this is the highest honor for a mercenary, and in his thoughts he notes that she is different from the familiar Walpurgis and seems more cheerful. He introduced himself as Walpurgis, and the other listened to him with a smile, not hiding his interest. She pointed to the soldiers and said that these were the ones whose lives had been saved, turning to Sir Valor. He, with a bandage around his neck, asks his interlocutor why another reason for happiness is needed. He looks anxiously at the outstretched arm in armor, as if asking for help or support. He watches as she, in armor, addresses a group of people in a room with large windows, with her arms outstretched. He, in armor with wings on his helmet, mentally noted that Walpurgis had not changed. He looks down with a slight smile, showing calm despite the bandage on his neck and the plaster on his cheek. He and she with a horse walk towards a large green tent against the backdrop of rocks in a desert area. A knight in armor speaks, while a young man with a bandage on his face listens attentively behind him. He shows off a glowing medallion on his collar and prepares to say something. A man in a red cloak looks thoughtfully at a map while the others discuss strategy and prepare for the upcoming battle. He says the name Philip with a mysterious smile, surrounded by blue flames. He greets the armored woman with respect, feeling the overwhelming pressure of meeting a true guardian. He lowered his head with a smile and thoughtfully placed his hand on his cheek as if thinking about something important. He raises his hand and says that the other person is as brave as a lion. He promises to reward his comrades with 100 florins, sitting next to a serious man in dress uniform. He dropped to one knee, clutching his hand and expressing pain or fatigue. The man in the chair commanded him to speak, while three others listened attentively in the room with a map on the table. He said he would like to reunite with his comrades and have a rest in Wittenbayer. She says that you can take from the reserves as needed, and he thanks her. He looks away thoughtfully, without saying a word. He thinks with his eyes closed that he would normally retreat at this point. He looks away thoughtfully, the light reflecting in his eyes. She is wearing armor with wings on her helmet and smiles, radiating confidence and calm. A man sits thoughtfully in a chair. An older man with white hair stands behind him, and another man with a mustache looks down, creating a tense atmosphere in the room. He says, "Go ahead," with determination in his voice against the background of a red wall. He looks forward with a slight smile and a bandage around his neck, showing confidence despite the sweat on his face. The image depicts Elector Steele Philip, who is referred to as Elector Steele in the Empire, and is formally known as Elector of the Finger. In the room with the map, a blond man sits at the table. A man with a wig stands next to him, and two others listen attentively to their conversation. He knelt down next to her in his armor, and she turned away in embarrassment. He smiles as he thinks that everyone has been confused, but admits that for now he remains a simple mercenary. He asks doubtfully if his interlocutor thought so. He mockingly asks what nonsense the other person is worried about and declares that he has no right to give advice to voters based on one merit. He explains the strategy on the map while the others listen attentively, and one man leans thoughtfully on the table. He noticed something unexpected and was slightly surprised. The knight explains that she needs to knock first, and he reacts to her words with surprise. He points his finger and speaks angrily to another person who raised his hand in front of him. A knight in armor with wings on his helmet speaks of Bavaria. He noted that Walpurgis lived up to expectations, and even the steel voter couldn't ignore her, standing next to him in armor. The old man snorts angrily, and the young man with his hair pulled back holds out his hand, expressing displeasure or demanding an explanation. He stares ahead tensely, a bead of sweat running down his face, expressing anxiety and concentration. The old man looks with concern at the young man sitting on the throne, who remains calm and determined in the tense atmosphere. He explains with his eyes closed that the chief servant of the demon king Pezamut. He prepares to fight flying demons with his sword in hand against the backdrop of a burning city, remembering the war with the Toe Kingdom 10 years ago. He recalls the battle with Marcus Anhalt 6 years ago, while two demonic creatures watch him with smirks. He explains with horns that Pezamut's ambush tactics played a decisive role in both battles. An old man in formal uniform stands next to a young man on a throne who looks thoughtful and tense. He puts on a mask and says that now no one will be able to recognize his true face. The old man said that there was a traitor among them, and the other man replied that he was simply raising the possibility. He smiles, showing confidence and hidden intention in the conversation. The image shows a part of the body of a person sitting on a chair, with his hand resting on the back. He smiles and says that the other person is quite brave, sitting in a dark room with red lighting. A warrior in armor sternly warns a seated man that his head is only in place because it allows it, and orders him to know his place. He speaks with a worried expression in his helmet, a drop of sweat running down his cheek. He walks ahead in a cloak, and she, in armor and a helmet, follows him without saying a word. He is wearing armor with a closed helmet and is sweating, clearly experiencing tension or excitement. He silently lowered his head and clenched his fist, as if preparing for something important. He runs forward with concentration, wrapped in a cloak with a bandage on his cheek and a determined expression on his face. He thinks someone is suspicious. He touches his face thoughtfully and thinks that this time he seems too arrogant. He thinks to himself that something has definitely changed this time. He explains that the red dragon fruits appear first, which usually appear much later. The armored warrior reflects that Walpurgis should not have appeared yet. He stands thoughtfully against the backdrop of glowing lines, as if preparing for an important decision or action. He thoughtfully said out loud, wondering if it was possible, looking at the building structures against the backdrop of the sunset. He looks away in surprise, not understanding what is happening. A knight in shining armor with wings on her helmet leaned forward slightly, smiling and sweating from tension or excitement. He asked her if she was Walpurgis while she was breathing heavily after running. He asked if she had run there out of concern for him, to which she replied with a smile that, of course she had, and he thought it was cute. A warrior in armor with wings on his helmet speaks against a backdrop of a burning sunset and rocks. He retreats in fear before the woman in armor, thinking that she can do whatever she wants. She covered her face with her hand and said that she should not be underestimated because she was from one of the richest noble families of the empire. She hides her face with a fan and laughs, saying that money is good. He asked shyly if the other man had a lot of clothes, while sweating nervously and smiling. He grips the fabric tightly on the other person's shoulder, showing tension or determination. He smiles against the sunset sky, expressing calm and confidence. A knight in a winged helmet looks thoughtfully at the sunset without saying a word. She exclaimed in armor that this was an opportunity, addressing the man with dark hair. He looks up with tears in his eyes and says something despite the pain and bandages on his face and neck. She says that she has never met such a selfless person, and he mentally admits that he has given a lot for her, calling her Dame Walpurgis. She is in armor, smiling, saying something against the backdrop of the evening sky. He calls to follow him, holding the hand of a warrior in armor with long blonde hair. He said the name Dame Walpurgis in surprise, looking at the woman in armor with long blonde hair. He looks at something in front of him with surprise and confusion, feeling a slight excitement and tension. He is embarrassed and tense, with wide eyes and a blush on his cheeks. On the field in front of the armies, Elector Steel Philip and Demon King Pezamut prepare for the battle for Hearthfame Hill. He fights on horseback and declares that he will finally kill Pezamut. He with the horns thoughtfully covers his mouth, and the other one next to him is silent, while he notices that he can smell the breath of someone from afar. One with horns congratulates the other, who is clutching his stomach and looks depressed. He asks if she is a woman, and the other responds with irritation and surprise that this question is being raised again. He is bound and taped, listening in fear as someone says that capturing the elector would make him a valuable hostage, and handing him over to a twisted madman is dangerous. He, tied with ropes, assures her that he can handle her himself and asks her to trust him. He puts on a ring with a purple stone, which begins to make a ringing sound. She quietly admitted that it was her. He stands on a dais, and 3 demons in suits tremble and fear in front of him. He looks closely at the glowing stone in the ring and ponders its meaning. She stands on another person's knees and asks with a smile for what was said to be repeated to her. He shouts in rage that the other one always goes too far. She stands over the man on the ground and says that she always takes things easy. He stands behind another one with horns and wings who is sweating and looks worried. Against the backdrop of a dragon and a demonic creature, a warrior with a sword and a sorceress prepare for battle, and the text states that the true conditions of the game's end are unknown, but the guardians may know the truth. The image shows the sound of running or fast movement conveyed through dynamic lines and sound effects. He is racing on a horse in the night forest. The sound of a rapid run can be heard. He marvels at the incredible speed of a man named Philly as he watches his quick movements. He admires the fact that the spare horse is so worthy of the lady of the house of Bayern. He is surprised that she managed to give him a very expensive potion worth 1,000 florins, which is equal to the price of an entire building. He confidently dodges the explosion, holding a flask of green liquid in his hand against the backdrop of a fiery flash. He says tensely, with a wound on his face, that he needs to do something. He on horseback says that even Elector Steele can't handle this war, and another one with a wound on his face listens tensely. He grips his sword tightly, sweating and showing determination despite his fatigue and wounds. 2 men laugh under the moon. One of them expresses agreement with the word, "yeah." He raises the cup in front of 2 armored figures with glowing red eyes against a blood-red wall. He, with a sword on his knees, accuses another of treason and doubts that he can be called a knight of the empire against the backdrop of a destroyed battlefield. He and she look at a dark tunnel with rails leading into the depths, illuminated by flickering lights. He says that, having realized this, he cooperates with Pesamud, and they shake hands. He is in chains and declares that he is arresting for treason as an elected Steele. He grips the hilt of his sword, and the old man asks with a grin what he is going to do next. He asks with red eyes if the other person understands what is happening, giving a thumbs up. He said something with surprise and slight alarm, a drop of sweat rolling down his face. He lies on the ground under the boot of another man who commands him to accept reality. He, with horns and earrings, calls someone crazy and expresses disapproval with the sound tisk, tisk. He stands over another man who is lying on the ground, and the sound of his heavy breathing can be heard. He has horns and screams loudly under the moon, snapping his fingers to express determination or challenge. 2 men with horns and uniforms salute and answer, "Yes, sir," to the order of the man standing above them. He panics and says he can't fight while 2 opponents are approaching with ropes in their hands. He is in tears and shaking with fear, expressing strong emotional shock. He with the horn says that the angels will not be able to save them. While she flies to them, 2 demons below look at her in amazement. A warrior in armor with wings delivers a powerful kick to a man with horns, causing him to go into shock and bleed from the mouth. He screams, "Damn!" in rage as an armored figure with flowing blonde hair approaches. One knight gives an order and another confirms that he understands against the backdrop of a night sky with a full moon. He warns Pesamut that Philip might escape, who shouts at them to be quiet as a group of people approach in the background. He was surprised that time passed so quickly, holding the glowing stone in his hand. She asks if he's ready, and he says he was just playing around a bit. He carries her on his back in the dark forest as raindrops start falling around him, and someone happily says, "Yes?" She says something confidently in the dark forest with a smile and sharp teeth. Dark creatures with red eyes approach menacingly, and one of them says that the interlocutor must be very hungry. He tensely orders to go and furiously tear apart the enemies. He falls from a height, surrounded by falling animals, against the backdrop of a dark forest and rain. He is on horseback, shooting a pistol at approaching monsters under the night sky. He thinks seriously about her, that she uses zombie dogs. 3 evil monsters with red eyes appear, and in her thoughts she says that she is wearing down the enemy and slowly devouring him. He turns around abruptly as a vicious dog with blazing eyes attacks him with a furious growl. He violently fights off the aggressive creature with red eyes that attacked him, throwing it aside with force. He raised his hand with the gun up, as if preparing to shoot into the dark sky surrounded by falling fragments. He looks ahead tensely with a bandage on his cheek, feeling the cold air around him and preparing for action. He thinks with disdain that he does not care about him, and that while Purgia is important, while the knight in armor and the rider on the horse symbolize the conflict. He rushes forward with a cry, thinking that he needs to hurry. Three riders race along a forest road at night, surrounded by flying and running shadows of animals. A group of horsemen led by a man in a red cloak ride their horses through the night, pursued by a pack of dogs. He desperately reports that his mana control has been disabled, while the other watches tensely. He grits his teeth and condemns the dirty trick of fighting on horseback in a storm. Someone warns a noble that the situation is dangerous, while he is quickly attacked by an evil creature. He looks ahead tensely, sweats, and clearly feels fear or anxiety. He retreats in panic from the huge beast, and she rushes on the unicorn with a sword in her hand, preparing to attack. He moved forward quickly, creating the effect of rapid movement. She, in armor and with long blonde hair, threw back the enemy in the dark forest, demonstrating strength and agility. He panics and replies that he is fine as the knight in armor quickly approaches him. He warns her to be extremely careful, and she agrees and calls him Dame Walpurgis. He turns to someone with surprise and alarm, exclaiming, "Your Highness!" He is in armor, surrounded by evil creatures with red eyes, begging for help when one of them bites his neck. He looks away tensely and begins to speak, visibly nervous and sweating. He, wearing armor with wings on his helmet, begins to speak but stops mid-sentence. He loudly shouts the name Dame Walpurgis. He, sweating and smiling nervously, offers to leave someone behind. Huge wolves with bloody mouths growl as two riders watch from above while one of the beasts claims to be different. He is in armor with his helmet down, contemplating the duty of a noble ruler. He gritted his teeth and thought to himself, if only. The man at the map smiles and wishes he had listened to Valor earlier, while the others watch him closely. He confidently thinks he could handle this situation. He admits with his eyes closed that everything happened because they ignored Sir Valor. He is in armor with long blonde hair, laughing and saying that people are very funny, while a ring is spinning around him. A warrior in a helmet with wings tries to dodge an attack from a girl with a red eye and a hood who strikes with a sword. A knight in armor addresses a man in a cloak, exclaiming, "Your Grace!" He and the other man in the helmet look at each other tensely, both covered in sweat and clearly worried. A warrior in armor knocks out a red-cloaked opponent with a powerful blow, sending him flying through the night forest. The horse reared up in fear, reacting to the loud sound of a blow next to it. He falls backwards, trying to protect himself with his arms raised at the moment of a strong blow or collision. He despairs as he looks at the gloved hand lying on the ground, thinking that they are doomed. He looks back tensely, sweating and feeling the cold wind, as if preparing for a serious meeting or danger. He sank to his knees, gritting his teeth and trembling, as if in great pain or despair. She tightens her belt, preparing for action. She confidently states that one must be strong enough to become an elector, holding a whip in her hands and smiling. The knight knelt before the cloaked man, expressing respect or request. She, with red eyes and a ring on her finger, says mysteriously, "Really, sister?" with a slight smile. The image shows the demon king Pansamut and Friedrich, who is his secret ally and Philip's uncle, with a description of their powers and roles. A warrior in armor with wings on his helmet screams with despair and tension, expressing strong emotions in a moment of struggle or danger. The image shows a majestic building with Gothic architecture and a flag fluttering in the wind with a coat of arms in the form of a shield and cross. She tells them to keep watching while the two men with horns stand behind with their eyes closed and their hands folded. He holds the hilt of his sword and prepares to fight. The sound of footsteps and a tense atmosphere can be heard around him. He looks with a slight blush and tension in his eyes, expressing inner feelings without words. A warrior in a feathered helmet says he caught someone. He shouted at her in anger as she fell down after the blow. She strikes with confidence, showing determination and strength in battle. He, wearing a helmet, reacts to an unexpected event with tension and fear, expressing this with an exclamation. She is in severe pain in her armor and screams from the blow. She laughs and says it was a great scream as she holds her weapon in her hands and prepares to attack. A warrior in armor tries to fight off an attacking, laughing girl who jumps on him with a whip in her hands. A warrior in armor with wings on his helmet leans on the ground, experiencing pain and tension after a blow. He is in armor with a closed helmet and long hair, crying under the water, and someone exclaims his name, Sir Valor. He jumps with determination with his sword, thinking that his interlocutor will definitely find a way to survive in this situation. She screams furiously, her eyes glowing red, showing her anger and strength. He raised his whip, preparing to strike, his expression determined and focused. She thinks about the sound of the gunshot in surprise, trying to understand what happened. She watches in horror as the dog falls from a great height down the slope. He moved sharply towards her with his fist, and she noticed his approach with alarm. He falls backwards with blood coming from his mouth after being hit by another man in the dark. She falls rapidly down from a height, surrounded by the effect of speed and dynamics. He punched her hard, and she fell to her knees in the forest in her armor, surrounded by falling sparks. She is in armor, with tears in her eyes, trying to say something, saying, Va. He speaks the word valor with concentration, preparing for an action or spell. He is wearing armor with wings on his helmet and smiles through tears, expressing deep feelings. He stands in the forest at night, looking forward thoughtfully with a bandage on his face. He stands in the dark forest, watching as she falls forward, creating a cloud of dust. He supports in his arms a girl in armor who has closed her eyes and appears to be unconscious. He holds the wounded one in armor carefully in his arms, while another watches from afar in the night forest. She thinks he killed the zombie dog and snuck up behind her so she didn't notice him. He stands in a dark forest, thinking to himself that this man is not ordinary at all. He carefully loads his gun, intently preparing for the upcoming event. She says heh with a slight smile, looking forward. He points the gun threateningly and says that you shouldn't call him brother with that expression on his face. She smiles with a mysterious expression and begins to speak, but the words in the image are not visible. She warns menacingly that her whip works faster than bullets can be loaded and advises to aim well. He carefully removes his glasses, making a soft sound. He rushes forward with bright red eyes, releasing a laser beam from his eye and surrounded by a vortex of energy. He swings his whip with concentration, preparing to attack or defend in a tense situation. He suddenly tensed up and noticed with alarm that something had grabbed him by the neck. She shouted defiantly, "Come here!" Component placement, holding the weapon in her teeth and preparing to attack. He grits his teeth and looks forward with fury, expressing determination and anger. She smiled and hit him in the face with her head, causing injury. She strikes the man in the face with her whip and smiles defiantly. He strikes sharply, creating a powerful whirlwind that destroys the surrounding space. He, with fangs and pink eyes, swings his whip furiously, demonstrating fighting spirit and passion. He quickly dodges flying arrows, moving at high speed in the night forest. He shoots a gun at a woman flying through the air with a whip in her hand. She mockingly asked if he was trying to close the distance as the two men rapidly approached her in combat. She is shocked and has difficulty saying that she can't believe it. He runs forward with effort, thinking that his skills with the whip were the best in the squad, but the enemy dodged and closed the distance. He holds his gun tensely and prepares for battle, expressing determination and anxiety. He rushes forward with fury, expressing his determination not to give up. He threatens her with a weapon, and she tries to defend herself, intensely concentrating on his movements. He suddenly appears with a smile and a knife in his hand and says, "Surprise." She turns around in fear, sweating and shaking, as if trying to escape from something scary. He stabs the dagger with determination, leaving a trail of blood on the stone road. He holds out his bloody sword under the moon with a smile, as if inviting to a fight or a deal. He panics when he realizes that he has lost an eye due to his focus on the shootout. He says with tension and pain in his voice that he needs time to recover. She closed one eye in concentration, summoning dark wings that quickly grew behind her back. She flies towards him with wings, smiling defiantly, and he stands below, watching her. He smiles and raises his hand to his face as if he's about to say something or make a joke. He, with bat wings and a blue cloak, said that it wouldn't work, smiling and spreading his arms under the night sky. He aims his gun with a smile and says that today he is a long-range shooter. He says something with a grin, showing confidence and a slight mockery. He notices that his sense of distance is impaired and prepares to fire in the dark forest. She gets shot in the stomach and tries to stand despite the pain and the sudden attack. Smoke comes out of the gun barrel, and the voiceover confirms his guesses. He screams with blood coming out of his mouth, expressing intense pain and despair. He fired an old-fashioned gun into the dark forest, pointing the weapon downwards where a loud bang rang out and dust rose. He stands with a knife and says that this is real pain, while the other one, with wings, writhes in pain on the ground. He holds a bloody knife to his face with a grin, expressing glee and self-confidence. He opened his eyes abruptly and quietly said, "Bro." He, wounded and with tears in his eyes, asks if they are going to kill him. He cries, holding back his emotions and clutching his hands to his face. He smirks and holds a dagger, ordering you to stop this nonsense and die like a dog. He looks depressed and tense, with a shadow on his face and a drop of blood near his eye, as if he's experiencing severe stress or pain. The image shows the moment of a strong impact or explosion accompanied by loud sounds. A message appears on the screen about the victory over Hexax, an executive demon from the Demon King faction. He looks at his opponent, lying with his eyes closed, and says that he cannot die because his soul has not yet left his body. He holds a flask with a glowing green solution in the dark. The image shows the effect of a healing potion with the words Valpurgis, spoken by one of the characters. He looks at the unconscious girl in armor lying in the forest, holding a bottle of medicine in her hand. He looks away thoughtfully, with a bandage around his neck and light wounds on his face. She is lying on the ground in armor with her helmet closed, apparently after a fight or injury. He raises his whip and smiles as he demonstrates that Hexax's technique is advanced enough to fight the Demon King without necromancy, and Valor dodges with strength and experience. He, with a bandage on his cheek and beads of sweat on his face, speaks thoughtfully about perfection. He holds a bottle of healing potion that says it completely heals wounds and diseases when applied to the affected area. He sits next to an unconscious armored woman in the woods and ponders what it means to apply directly. She notices a blow directly under the armor and internally exclaims about it. He nervously convinces himself that it is just a medical procedure and denies any indecent thoughts. He enthusiastically mixes the green liquid in a flask and happily claims that there's nothing obscene in it. He lies in bed under the blanket and says that he can't live like this anymore because he's tired. He lies unconscious on the floor while another stands in the doorway watching him. He stands alone, holding back tears, looking deeply upset. He is breathing heavily, sitting on the floor, and another one stands in front of him, watching. He scratches his neck thoughtfully and says that he even takes jobs for the money. He looks away, and the other one, sweating and smiling, holds a bundle in his hands, clearly nervous while talking. He counts the money and confirms its presence. He hands over the money and says that the debt must be repaid first, and the other one steps back in fear. He expresses irritation and displeasure by making the sound and showing anger on his face. He smiles nervously and raises his finger, trying to explain or prove something. He explained that it was an important task, justifying himself to someone off camera. He mockingly asked who this nerd was. He explains that Guardian of Humanity is a huge open world with complete freedom, standing with a sword against the backdrop of a sunset and a fluttering cloak. One of them says that she is accompanied by amazing female characters who are recognized all over the world. He explains enthusiastically, pointing to a globe with flags of different countries, and his interlocutor listens attentively. Banknotes are flying against the backdrop of skyscrapers, and someone says that today's task is also connected to something important. He says something with a grin, and the other one listens, standing next to him by the window in a bright room. He touches his chin thoughtfully while the other one stands behind him, smiling and embarrassed, expressing joy and excitement. He turns and says something, emphasizing his words with a hand gesture. He looks closely at the phone screen, concentrating on studying the information he has received. He holds up a phone with a message asking him to cancel today's meeting because they have made up. The image shows the process of logging into the game with an abstract background of blue and light blue rectangles. He sighs and admits that he found himself here spontaneously, looking at the sky and the surrounding houses. He marvels at the technology that makes the sky look so realistic as he stands on the street among passers-by in the ancient city. She are chatting happily at the market while the man behind the counter laughs as he watches them. Two men laugh while a woman in the background calls out to them loudly. He noticed something at the apple counter and asked with interest what was going on. He speaks loudly while standing behind the fruit boxes, expressing dissatisfaction or demanding something. Someone noted that the scene with the boxes filled with fruit looks quite exciting and immerses you in the atmosphere. He is surprised to notice that the face looks so realistic that you can even see the pores and considers it almost real. He demands to be let go, and the other one, smiling, replies, "Oops," and holds his hand near the apple counter. A man with a serious expression sits behind boxes of apples while another asks him about money. A boy and a man are looking at apples at the market, and he apologizes, saying that he has nothing. He reacts with surprise and quietly says, "Huh?" She looks worriedly at the boy who is holding his stomach and tries to understand what happened to him. He sweats a little and says, and the other one looks at him in surprise and says, "Oh." He looks with delight at the apple that someone hands him with a smile. The boy happily shows the apple. The man says it's nothing, and the woman thanks him for her son. He smiles awkwardly and rubs his temple, showing embarrassment or uncertainty. The boy thanks the man and says goodbye, and he advises the child to listen to his mother, who is standing next to him. He raised his hand and said with a smile that it reminded him of the past. He raves about fried chicken, and she smiles and calls him picky. She says the game is quite adorable, holding the hand of a boy who is eating an apple and smiling. He clenches his fist and prepares to fight, and 3 men in suits get angry and advance on him. He thanks the woman, who smiles as the task completion notification appears. He hides behind a wall and watches the 3 men in the distance with tension, preparing for a possible conflict. He delivers a quick blow to the green creature with red eyes, showing confidence and strength in the fight. He runs forward, and a group of men in suits with sticks pursue him with fury. He stands on the edge of a cliff in front of a huge dragon that is breathing fire from its mouth, preparing for battle. He stands against the backdrop of trees with a questioning expression and chews something on a stick, turning back. A knight in armor with wings on his helmet stands confidently, holding his hand on his belt, preparing to talk. He asked in surprise about the boars, looking at another man in a cloak. He says with a smile and closed eyes that he takes something seriously, accompanying his words with a hand gesture. The image shows a wounded boar with blood coming from its mouth, falling or hitting the ground. He asks the girl in armor if she lifted a finger while she stands next to him, and a fallen boar lies on the ground. He is in armor with wings on his helmet, smiling and saying something in the forest. He looks away silently, not saying a word. He smiles and says not to worry and releases magical blue sparks from his hand against the backdrop of a forest. He's embarrassed and silent, and she, wearing a helmet, asks if his trust issues are related. She's wearing armor with a closed helmet, smiling and folding her hands, preparing to say something. He noticed something and quietly said, "No." Someone calls out loudly to Han Jae-woo, addressing him against the backdrop of a building and the sky with birds flying by. The crowd below calls out loudly for Han Jae-woo, addressing him from the balcony where 2 people stand in the shadows. He admires her achievements, saying he is impressed that she was able to come so far. He stands in fancy clothes and says the word elector to someone off camera. He says that if she hadn't spoken to him then, he would never have seen it. A knight in armor speaks of the peace he has brought, leaning on a railing, while a man behind him listens attentively. The image shows a bird clutching a rope in its beak against a white sky. He stands surrounded by floating feathers and looks forward with an expression of surprise and thoughtfulness. She, in armor, says that these are their loyal citizens, addressing a man who is looking at the crowd of people below. He is in armor with long blonde hair, looking to the side as if preparing for battle or thinking about the upcoming battle. White birds with big wings fly over a city with many buildings and people on the streets. She's wearing armor and a helmet and speaks while holding the reins of a horse, with another person's hand visible nearby. She is wearing armor with wings on her helmet and smiles, and says that she has never seen anyone with such... He sits silently in the forest with bruises and bandages on his face and neck, clearly in pain and fatigue. She laughs and says she understands, adding, "Ha ha." He, with bruises, says that everything is quite good, and the knight in the helmet laughs in response. She, sitting on a unicorn, announces that they will soon arrive at the Walpurga convention. He rides a black horse and agrees that he needs to quickly let others know that he is alive. She, in armor and helmet, says that she owes more than she can express in words. He thoughtfully raised his hand to his face and asked if he was really asking for something. They ride along a forest road, and he says that the monastery will fully reward her, to which she replies that she wants something completely different. The image shows a night view of a Gothic cathedral with large stained glass windows and spires against a starry sky. She is in armor with wings on her helmet, saying something anxiously, standing against the backdrop of a night forest. Nun says her monastery is in emergency lockdown. He states that Valorstead Valor cannot enter. He explains that time flows differently in the game and the real world, putting a strain on the brain, but the Aquila AI protects nearly 1 billion minds with its flawless computing systems. Against the backdrop of a night sky with a full moon, 3 silhouettes stand near an illuminated old-style building. He lies on the bed and thinks that the situation is complicated because he planned to demand the heart of an angel from the monastery. The image shows a shining gold ring with a blue gemstone and wings against a glowing sky. The image shows the facade of a Gothic cathedral at night with no visible characters or dialogue. She stands with her eyes closed, her arms crossed over her chest, surrounded by a glow and a halo of light behind her. The image describes a sacred item of the highest rank with the blessing of the goddess, capable of returning the soul of its owner. He lies upside down and screams in pain or fear. She walked into the room in armor, and he looked at her questioningly. She apologized in armor for forcing the guest to stay in such a wretched place despite his status. He lies on the bed and says what he thinks, and she in armor asks what he is doing. He said he was glad and could always rely on her while she sat in her armor with her head down. A warrior in armor tells a man that the abyss has fallen into darkness. He gets out of bed and says that it was the abyss's deputy, and she sits on a chair and listens to him in the room by the light of the lamp. He is surprised to think that Margaret is the high abbess, while another man claims that she was a traitor from within. He is shocked to realize that Margareta is still alive and someone is calling his name Valor. He thought she had died a long time ago and didn't pay attention, but she asked if he was okay. A group of dark-robed monks discuss how she is unrivaled in martial arts and can easily subdue lower demon kings, being a symbol of strength. He realizes that she is the one who turned the Walpurga Convention into a military force. He said with determination that they absolutely had to save her. He stood up abruptly, and she, in armor with her face covered, clasped her hands to her chest in fear. She is in armor, with wings on her helmet, excitedly asking what is going on, clutching her hands to her chest against the backdrop of hearts. He says something enthusiastically with a tense smile and a light drop of sweat on his face. He leaned defiantly towards the armored man with long blonde hair, preparing to attack or threaten. The gloomy facade of the building with the inscription Walpurga Convent is shown against the background of rain. The room with the exercise machines and wooden wheel is empty, creating an atmosphere of anticipation or peace. On the wall hang photographs of strong fighters under the inscription about strong faith coming from a strong body. He sits thoughtfully by the window, his hands folded in front of his face, in dark clothes with a cross around his neck. The knight in armor laughs and he is embarrassed, while someone notes that the tension in the room is very strong. He looks in surprise at the armored knight who suddenly releases a powerful energy blast. A hooded man with a cross around his neck speaks tensely to someone named Walpurgis. She's wearing armor with wings on her helmet and speaks with concern, trying to explain the situation. He smiles and greets, and she, in armor, reacts to his words with surprise and slight awkwardness. He speaks tensely, clenching his hands into fists against the backdrop of shelves of books in a darkened room. He said with confidence that he had read the Gospel of the 7 Demons, adjusting his cloak and beaming with pride. A nun holds a cross in panic and expresses fear of something that causes her great anxiety. He looks at the chained book and thinks that it is darkness after all. He is in a panic and can't believe what is happening, sweating and with a tense expression on his face. Someone hit the ground hard, shouting about the book. He smiles and says something with confidence, while in a room with a chandelier on the ceiling. He smirks at the hooded man praying while the small redhead in the helmet trembles in fear between them. He leans heavily on his hand, feeling tension and trembling in his fingers. She, in the guise of a nun with a cross around her neck, speaks to a man standing opposite her in a room with a large window and curtains. He slammed his fist into the ground, sending debris and dust flying. He squeezes his hand with force, and stone fragments fall from it. He and a woman in armor walk among monks with crosses surrounded by an ominous green fog. He thinks in horror about the crazy place where someone broke the table by force and notices the smell of sweat around. He looks ahead tensely, and behind him stands a powerful dark warrior with red eyes and a cross on his neck, his arms crossed. He looks tense and says that something is very tasty, and she, in armor, listens to him in surprise. 2 nuns stand in the shadows. One of them says she would like to, but her uncle. He reported that they had arrived, standing in front of large purple doors with mystical patterns and glowing shadows around them. He said he understood looking at the man who was holding out his hand against the purple shadows. One of the nuns ordered everyone else to wait here, expressing determination and sternness. The nun looks away with a serious expression and says something important. He abruptly opened the door, from which purple mystical shadows burst out. He feels incredible demonic energy and takes mental damage from the darkness. He asks if she is okay, and she replies that she has the blessing of the goddess and asks how he is doing. He smiles and says that his mind is protected from darkness, so he feels fine. A woman in nun's robe says, "High Abbess," while surrounded by purple mystical shadows. He thinks with alarm that this person is causing him great anxiety. He thinks this man has the most overwhelming power in history. Dark purple shadows surround High Abbess Walpurga's legs, emphasizing her powerful presence. She lies with her eyes closed, surrounded by dark purple shadows, and someone calls her Margareta. He and his double, panicking and sweating, turn sharply to someone behind them. The nun clutches her face with her hand and expresses great concern. He clenched his teeth and was sweating, clearly under a lot of stress or fear. He looks down thoughtfully. A bead of sweat appears on his face, expressing concern. She lies with her eyes closed, feeling uneasy about the shadow that touches her face. He grabs another by the cloak, threatening him, and he responds by saying that he will pay any price, taking 50 damage in the process. The monk grabs Velour by the cloak, and the girl in armor watches in surprise. He is breathing heavily and appears tense, as if he has just experienced intense physical or emotional stress. A chained monk with tears in his eyes begs a young man who listens to him with concern. He places his hand on her head, checking her condition as she lies with her eyes closed and black veins on her face. He extends his hand and says there is a way out of the situation. The dark-hooded man grabbed the red-haired man and demanded to know what was going on immediately, dealing 50 damage to him. He breathes heavily and holds his chest as he watches the other man punch him hard. He took a deep breath and concentrated, clutching the hood of his jacket. The nun explains that the method is simple, addressing the man next to her. The man said to use the monastery's holy relic on the abbess, while the armored woman and nun listened to him. The image shows a sealed artifact, described as a sacred relic, that the great demon thrashing death sealed to prevent its use. She, dressed as a nun, looks down with a serious expression on her face and begins to speak. She closed her eyes and sweated when someone touched her cheek. He thoughtfully recalls the words of another, and the old man warns that he's going to pass this on to someone else. He says something with a grin to the older man, who looks at him with interest. He confidently stated that he was the most suitable person to pass on the curse, and asked if this seemed convincing. He says that if anyone dares to come near, he will kill without warning. The nun speaks tensely about what happened, leaning on her knees and looking ahead. He looks down with a serious expression, as if thinking about something important. She lies with her eyes closed, and someone puts a hand on her forehead, checking her temperature. He sighed heavily, expressing fatigue or disappointment. He takes a step. His foot touches the floor, making a sound. Two people walk towards each other on a tiled floor. The sound of footsteps can be heard. He listens as a nun with tired eyes speaks of the curse. He threatens that it will torment the other for the rest of his life. He smiles, and she, in armor with wings on her helmet, extends her hand, expressing joy and greeting. He says with a smile that perhaps he really is someone special. He looks at the mystical book and says that he is just... The rest of the sentence is not visible. A nun with a serious expression stands in a room and looks forward attentively. He put his hand on his chest with a smile and said something with slight embarrassment. He sighs heavily and covers his face with his hand, expressing fatigue or despair. The nun smiles as she addresses Angela, while the young man next to her looks on with a smile. He carefully reaches for a ring with a blue stone lying on a red pillow with gold embroidery. He thinks he should put it off until later, but he thinks now is the perfect time to make Margaret an ally. He supports a knight in armor with wings on his helmet, who, despite his fatigue, tries to smile. He speaks nervously in a helmet, and a woman with a cross on her neck smiles back. He reaches out his hand with a glowing ring to the unconscious girl with blue hair. He looks ahead with concentration, feeling tension and inner determination. He places his hand with the ring on the head of the blue-haired girl, who looks exhausted and is breathing heavily. He anxiously holds the unconscious girl, surrounded by a mystical purple light and shadows. A panicked monk is surrounded by dark energy, while a helmeted warrior stands nearby, preparing for battle. Dark energy with a purple glow spreads in a room with lit candles, accompanied by the sound of screaming. He stands on the surface of the moon and looks at blue glowing objects falling from the sky against the backdrop of planets and stars. He was surprised and asked if he was in the kingdom of darkness, noting that it was completely dark around. He looks around in alarm as he hears a voice calling itself the one who hides in the grave and asking who dared to call upon it. He stands on a rocky surface and loudly declares that his name is Valorstead Valor, calling for the curse to be lifted. He stands on the lunar surface, and from the shadows comes the question of whether he has gone mad. He notices with alarm the strange sighs and hears someone say that they have no business with him. A powerful purple energy with lightning appears around, creating a tense and dangerous atmosphere. He stands on a dark ball in space and orders it to disappear, expressing rage and power over what is happening. He covers himself with his cloak when the message about protecting the player's soul appears. The dark entity with the purple eye is surprised that it cannot extract the enemy's soul. He shouts into the night sky, ordering someone to pass on something. Someone is sharply demanding that you immediately give your name, threatening silence. He stands surrounded by light and declares that he will extract the souls of everyone who has ever been in the same space with him. He notices with irritation that the enemy has resorted to taking hostages and decides to respond in kind. He exclaims in amazement when he sees a brightly glowing and pulsating purple object. He angrily calls someone an impudent fool, crossing his arms under his chest under the night sky. He smiles and laughs quietly, expressing hidden pleasure or mockery. He stands with his arms outstretched in front of a bright light and energy coming upward, surrounded by lightning and a powerful aura. He smiles and says that he will fulfill the request, and the other one happily thinks that he has caught him. In the darkness with lightning, a sign appears that a condition exists. He stands on a rock and watches a powerful glowing rift in space emitting a bright purple light. He listens warily to the sounds around him, preparing for possible danger on the rocky terrain. Amur, a rank 17th demon, thinks to himself that the enemy has taken the bait. He wondered if he should speak to him more kindly. He challenges the opponent by saying that if he can take it, let him try to take the hit. He defends himself with effort, exclaiming about the power of darkness, preparing to attack. He angrily shouts that this was not part of the deal, expressing strong dissatisfaction. He releases a powerful energy charge, while the thought sounds that in this world nothing is given for free, and for great power you have to pay a high price. He shouts tensely and prepares to attack, expressing determination and effort in battle. He screams with rage and warns that it is worth waiting and seeing what happens next. The image shows a Gothic cathedral with a bird on a branch in the foreground, with none of the characters visible or speaking. He woke up suddenly in a panic, breathing heavily and with a frightened expression on his face. He breathes heavily, sitting on the bed, and is surprised that he's still alive. He stands with his back turned, feeling the tension and inner excitement that manifests itself in the trembling of his body. He distorts his voice with a mad expression on his face, squeezing his hand with the ring, as if experiencing strong emotions or pain. He stands on a huge skull with horns against a backdrop of lightning and declares that he is now the king of necromancy. The image shows legions of red-eyed undead, including skeletons and a scythe-wielding reaper, and the text states that they are commanded by a being who controls the lichs, the dead, and the death dragons. He concentrates on creating a glowing ball of energy that emits a blue glow and sends it forward, activating his magical power. He stands at the window with his arms outstretched and declares that he is number one. He smiles with a slight smile and a slight blush, expressing contentment and relaxation. He lies there, sweating and breathing heavily, when she, in armor, enters through the door with a tray in her hands. He, in armor with wings on his helmet, refuses through tears, saying, "No, lady." He thanks Lady Walpurgis for her help, expressing his gratitude with some hesitation. She, in armor, sternly told him never to do such reckless things again, and he scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. She clenches her fists in her lap, clearly feeling tension or anxiety. He looks away thoughtfully and sweats slightly, as if trying to hide his awkwardness or doubt. He placed his hand on another person's chest in a gesture of support or consolation. He scratched the back of his head in embarrassment and smiled slightly, trying to explain himself in a difficult situation. He is embarrassed and sweating, and she, in armor with her face covered, blushes and remains silent nearby. He is in armor with a closed helmet, saying something, smiling slightly. He silently looks out the window with her in armor, not saying a word. He and she look in surprise at the bright light that suddenly appeared outside the window. He exclaimed in alarm, while 3 nuns and a knight in armor watched warily what was happening in the forest. He looks away thoughtfully, as if thinking about something important. He regains consciousness, and a woman in a nun's robe notices that he is awake. He looks tensely at the blindfolded man standing next to him as dust rises around them and a loud thud is heard. He asked in surprise what kind of creature it was, while she and another woman watched him from behind. He looks around tensely, sensing the approach of danger and preparing for the upcoming event. He looks at a tall man sitting on a branch of a huge tree illuminated by bright light. At the top of the tree, he prepares to attack. Below, 3 take cover from a powerful blow that shakes the ground and raises dust. She stands confidently, smiling, and hears someone loudly calling her name, Margarita. She winks and gives a thumbs up with a smile, expressing confidence and approval. Valor confronted the Dark Lord, the cosmic being who had cast the curse on Margarita in order to break it and lift the spell on her. She joyfully descends the stairs, and he follows her into the castle by torchlight. He reflects on the fact that Philip has already emerged from the deep forest and reports that he has received the highest rank in the necromancer system. cold-blooded. He uses force with concentration and admits that he planned to secretly kill Philip. He is on horseback and reflects on how his chances are slim without the angel's heart, given that the enemy is a guardian. She laughs and thinks that she can't let her guard down until the very end, while he looks at her with surprise. The nun exhales steam with a tense expression and is clearly irritated or angry. He asks not to be like this, and the other asks if Walpurgis was always like this. He whispers something out loud while she smiles in armor with a closed helmet. She smiled and her eyes sparkled, thoughtfully placing her hand to her face, expressing joyful surprise. He noticed that it was Walpurga's underground vault, while standing in front of the massive door with another man. She and he watch as the cloaked figure quickly walks away without saying a word. She speaks with delight about the weapons and bones she found, and he listens to her with a slight smile, observing their surroundings. She holds the other person's hands tenderly and looks at him with a soft smile, expressing care and support. He calls Lady Margareta, and she, trembling, admits that she is very scary against the background of flames and shadows. She backs away in fear as a metal hand tries to grab her, and the two onlookers look alarmed. The door opens abruptly, and bright light and sparks pour out from behind it. He thinks with confidence that everything is going smoothly so far, clenching his fist in determination. He said he was going to step up his efforts, after which the hunt for Philip would begin. The image shows a cityscape with trees, a church tower, and birds flying in the sky against a backdrop of sunlight. He asks Philly if his new gear looks cool, and the horse responds by neighing. He receives an S-rank curse item that neutralizes weak curses and has the skill Shadow Burst. He confidently declared that this weapon would be second to none, and the A-rank monster, Karka's magical dagger, appeared, enhancing the owner's undead skills. He listens in amazement as the horse makes the sound E-go-go. She stands in armor with a closed helmet, arms crossed, smiling, illuminated by soft light. He asked doubtfully if this was really so, in response to the words of another, who spoke of an eternal connection. He fights the orcs, remembering the battle in the final confrontation with Hexax. He thanked Walpurgis for her invaluable help, calling her reliable as she knelt with her sword. A knight on a white horse thanks for the words spoken, while armed men stand around him. He says something with a smile, and she stands next to him in armor, showing no emotion and looking away. He smiles nervously and says something, standing against the backdrop of trees. She lifted her helmet and spoke of her face hidden beneath it. He smiles nervously and says he wants to be the cause of something. She adjusts her winged helmet and smiles as she stands against the backdrop of a forest. He smiles, lifting his helmet slightly, showing confidence and determination. He looks at the knightess, who adjusts her helmet and begins to talk about her uncle. He explains in his helmet that it is a nickname, while the group looks at him from the darkness with sinister smiles. One of the characters asks Valor to look at his face. A knight in armor with long blonde hair stands opposite a man in a red cloak against a background of green trees and a blue sky. He looks up with a slight smile and a blush on his face, enjoying the moment against the backdrop of the sky and trees. She asked what she looked like and started to speak, but didn't finish her sentence. He holds the helmet, and she, with long blonde hair, asks if she is ugly. She looks over the cup with embarrassment, holding it with both hands. He blushes as someone with a glove covers his mouth and quietly says, "Ah." She squeezes her shoulder in embarrassment, feeling tension and internal discomfort. He smiles nervously and tries to calm the worried horse, gesturing with his hand to show that everything is okay. She sighs with relief and thinks that she has seen many Walpurgis runs, but never like this one. He says he wants to give her something, and she reacts sheepishly while a horse watches nearby. He holds a shiny medallion in his hand and says that he got it from his uncle, asking why give something. She explained that it was a sign, passing it on to him, who accepted it with surprise. He looks at his hand in surprise and thinks about the strange sensation he just felt. He holds a pendant in his hand and says, "It is a sign to always remember the presence of the other next to him." He smiles sheepishly and says he didn't expect such a turn of events. She puts her hands on her chest and says it's a promise. He sheepishly wished her luck, and she watched him with a smile, standing on the stone road. He happily announces that he will be first, standing next to the horse, while another character watches him. He looks irritated, and the caption highlights his state. A message appears on the screen about the unlocking of Walpurgis's romantic route, accompanied by the sound of a seal. The horse looks tired and tense, with beads of sweat on its neck against a purple-patterned sky. He experiences pain and makes a sound expressing his suffering. He sits on a black horse in the dark, wearing a red cloak, and carefully examines the surroundings. He lies on the ground among the dead soldiers and says that things are starting to feel good here. He lies on the ground and says he fought fiercely while the other man looks at him tiredly. There are two people lying on the ground, unconscious or dead. Blood is flowing from the mouth of one. Bloodstains and shrapnel are visible around. He tightly grips the hilt of the sword from which a bright light emanates. He was riding a horse in the rain and said that the area would have to be searched. He carefully reads the information about a new monster called Magic Dicer, which has a unique skill to penetrate the magic effect. He said with a smile that it was interesting. He activates the skill by holding a weapon surrounded by purple energy. He commands his followers, bloodied, to become his limbs and summons them with dark energy. He prepares for battle with concentration, surrounded by a mystical purple aura, demonstrating the power of a vampire. He was given the task of finding and tracking Philip throughout the territory. He is wearing a cloak and shouts with determination, while the other one with white hair is surrounded by a dark aura while several people are watching them. He points to the red-haired girl, who responds obediently, confirming his order. He says with a grin that now no one can stop him. On the night street of a ruined city, snowflakes fall and a sound is heard, indicated by large glowing symbols. Three men in armor breathe heavily after the fight, looking around tensely. He reacts tensely to the situation, and behind him, two mysterious characters are visible, one of whom expresses dissatisfaction with the disorder. He jerked his hand away, warning of an emergency. He clasps his hand to his mouth, listening intently as someone calls him Prince Philip. He announces that he has come for Prince Philip, appearing in the city at night. One man warns another that the situation is dangerous and that he needs to assess everything first, and the other man smiles, ignoring the warning. He furiously strikes the other one, who cries out in pain. He is wearing a fur cloak and yelling at a man in armor, expressing rage and demanding an explanation. Two knights in armor look worried. One of them stands up with difficulty and the other watches him with concern. He smirks and orders someone to be demoted and given to his subordinates after the job is done. The image shows the moment of a strong impact or collision with a sound effect and dynamic lines. He said, breathing heavily, that he had come addressing Valor, who stood before him surrounded by purple energy. He stands confidently surrounded by four people with red eyes, radiating dark energy and showing strength. He says with a smile that His Highness is waiting for them, while two knights breathe heavily, leaning on their swords. He smiles and says, "Awe," with a mocking tone. He bursts into the crowd, and a man in a brown fur jacket watches the proceedings with a smile. The four walk down a corridor, discussing Walpurga's underground vault containing forbidden magical artifacts suitable for the dark-cursed Valor. He looks forward with tension, blood splashing around, showing a tense and dangerous moment. He covered his face with his hand and smiled, radiating confidence in a hidden threat. Two people in raincoats stand opposite each other in the rain, surrounded by people ready to fight, and a lifeless body lies on the ground. He says the word puppy while holding a sword and surrounded by a fiery aura. He realized with despair that he had been raising a bastard all his life. He called someone a damned mongrel with a smile on his face. He opened his eyes wide, expressing great surprise and tension. The image shows the moment of a kick, accompanied by the sound kanu. Against the backdrop of a lunar eclipse, an inscription appears about the first technique of the martial art, moon shadow sword art. He delivers a powerful blow with his sword, sending two of his opponents flying back while the third watches in horror. He delivers a powerful blow in his cloak, from which two opponents are wounded and sent flying back. He noted with tension that the rank and file cannot cope with the task alone. He lies on the ground with his eyes closed, and next to him is another person's hand and face, while he thinks that such a fight is only wasting his mana. He turns decisively to the three men in uniform, who answer him, "Yes, my lord." He smiles and says that he can now fight while holding a sword surrounded by flames. He concentrates on calling on magical energy, preparing for action with a confident smile on his face. Two people fight in the air, one with a blue flame on his hand, the other with a golden sword, and he declares that his heart is as boundless as the endless plain. Two warriors fight in the air among collapsing debris, one holding a sword and the other a dagger. The two heroes stare at each other tensely as they prepare for the final showdown in the rain and flying debris. He slammed his fist down on the wooden surface, creating a sense of power and tension. He jumps down from above with a furious grin, and the other one deflects the attack, breaking the wooden planks around him. Two men fight. One delivers a powerful blow with his sword, causing an explosion and flying debris around. He announces that it is Elector steel and says that it is a style of sword he has often used and prized. He reflects that behind the elegant and beautiful side, there is a deadly blow waiting to strike back. A rock with ledges is visible against the night sky with the moon, but the characters are missing. He stands against the wall in the night, clutching the hilt of his sword, his eyes glowing with a cold light as if preparing for the coming battle. He stands in a ruined hall with a sword in his hand, and another in a cloak pronounces the name Valorstead Valor in surprise. He speaks with a grin about his interactions with the nuns, conveying confidence and a veiled threat. He holds his sword tensely and says something important in a dark, dimly lit room. He landed hard on the ground, causing a powerful explosion and vibrations around him. The image shows a cosmic phenomenon, a partial eclipse with bright light and a reddish glow around a dark disk. He raises his sword with determination, activating the technique Lunar Shadow Sword Art, second form, falling. He looks ahead with tension and determination, sensing the approach of danger. He thrusts the weapon hard into the door, making a thumping sound and causing cracks to form on the surface. He tensely fights another who confidently parries his sword strike in a dark room. He remembers all the internal injuries in horror, while a demon with horns and an evil beast behind his back looks at him menacingly. He says with a bright look and a smile that he can't wait for the fun to begin. He suddenly kicks his opponent in the chest, who takes the attack in surprise. He spews blood, falling backwards when in great pain or injured. He announces his arrival with confidence, sitting in a dynamic pose and smiling. He, breathing heavily and leaning on his hand, regrets that his body is not in the best shape to fight someone like an opponent. He kneels and says that he valued talent and bestowed many blessings, addressing the man standing before him with a sword. He says with an eerie smile as a gloved hand touches his neck against an ominous red light. He accuses the other of mercilessly betraying Walpurgis, who worked hard for him, holding the sword between them. He speaks with difficulty as another tries to snatch 2 daggers from him, asking how many people he thinks have died. He looks in surprise at his interlocutor, who accuses him of still calling himself the Chosen One. He asks Whaler to think about something important with blood on his face. He cries and speaks with difficulty, expressing strong emotions and pain. He screams with tension and tears, releasing saliva and fragments of teeth, expressing strong emotions. He reacted with surprise to the words of another who smiled and turned to him in the night environment. He excitedly shows a glowing bottle of potion, explaining its meaning. He begs for help and promises to give anything, and the other responds to his words with interest in the destroyed night city. He orders another to kneel and beg Walpurgis forgiveness, and he, frightened and sweating, humiliatingly agrees. He holds a bottle of purple liquid with a smile and lets out a quiet chuckle. He holds out a bottle of purple liquid, and the other gratefully accepts it in the rain. He drinks the purple liquid with tears in his eyes, feeling intense tension and internal struggle. The image shows a vessel containing a bright purple liquid breaking, accompanied by the sounds of breaking. He asked how it tasted as the other began to vomit purple liquid, clearly disgusted. With his eyes wide open and a tear on his cheek, he expresses a strong emotion, perhaps pain or despair. He tenses his throat and expresses indignation as he stands in front of a destroyed wall. He happily hugs the bottle of liquid and says that Neha kept it in reserve. He furiously shouts at the enemy, "Die, Valor," and prepares to stab him with his dagger. He releases a powerful stream of energy from his hand with a smile on his face, creating the effect of a sudden blow. He delivers a powerful sword strike surrounded by a dark aura, sending 2 opponents flying back from the force of the attack. He expresses extreme fear or shock in a tense scene with his eyes wide open. The image shows the moment of a strong impact with a loud sound, accompanied by the effect of breaking or destruction. He asks the man standing with the sword in surprise if he is alive. He says with brightly glowing eyes that he left the enemy to die while he was surrounded by evil creatures. He looks forward with a serious expression, and 2 men behind him watch him, one of whom puts his hand on his chest. He looks in horror at the man standing in front of him, feeling threatened and afraid. He threatens another with his life by holding a sword to his throat and stating that the price is his life. He cries and trembles, with blood on his lips. The reflection in the mirror repeats his suffering. A warning appeared asking if Piffenheim would be allowed to kill the Guardian. He looks down thoughtfully as a warning appears on the screen that killing the guard could break the game's progress. He is asked whether he should continue killing the guard and ponders that this may affect the course of the game. He cries and holds a sword in front of his face, expressing despair and pain. He asks with an expression of anger and pain if there is anything connected with this person. He orders Piffenheim to finish off the enemy while two men fight in the background. The image shows a dramatic sound or explosion that accompanies a sudden action or event. He strikes another with his sword, killing him, and blood flies everywhere. The message "error" appears on the screen, and a beep is heard indicating an error or failure. An error warning appears on the screen, stating that the Guardian has been destroyed. An error message and sound will appear on the screen, indicating that the hidden scenario, "Kill the Guardians," has been unlocked. He reads a message that after killing all the guards, the player will receive the Transcendent class, and the difficulty of the game will increase. He stands in the darkness with a red glow around him and notices that the difficulty is increased dramatically. He says with a grin that even his interlocutor did not expect such a move, against the background of a red grid and glowing red particles. A bright red light appears against the nighttime backdrop of the city, drawing attention to the central square. Against the backdrop of the starry night sky with a full moon, no one is visible. The scene conveys the calm and silence of the night. The image shows the planet Earth from space against the backdrop of a starry sky. She looks forward with a slight smile, surrounded by a cosmic background and a glowing halo above her head. She smiles, her eyes glowing with purple energy, as if preparing to use power or magic. She turns on the tape recorder and says that he did indeed break the seal by addressing Valor. He poses with confidence, and she notes with admiration his delight and self-confidence. She smiled as she summoned more destruction, holding the device in her hand against the backdrop of space. An old TV with an antenna sits on a dresser in the dark, making noise and static. She stands on the ground with her arms outstretched and says, "This is just the beginning." The text tells that Piffenheim, Philip's former loyal subordinate, was betrayed and killed by zombie dogs, and then revived by Valor in the deep forest and became a vampire out of hatred for Philip. Skill acquisition notifications have appeared: Moonshadow Sword Mastery, S rank, and Princess Coral, A rank. Notifications have appeared about obtaining 2 skills, Imperial Unrest and Mephistopheles Acting, with SS rank. A message appears on the screen indicating that the skill Great Leader's Dignity has been acquired at SS rank. He stands in a room and controls holographic screens floating in front of him. A man with a beard and yellow hair looks back as if warning of something important. A message appears on the screen about receiving the skill Undead Recovery S rank, and a voice announces this. He said with a smile that he had received 2 exclusive S rank skills as a reward for leveling up. He holds in his hand a small golden purse with a shining stone and asks if it should be dropped. He examines the object and says it looks like ordinary magic lightning. He tries to hold up the magic shield, but gets hit with electricity and cries out in pain. He asks doubtfully if it was a barrier, his hand surrounded by sparkling energy. He breathes a sigh of relief as a glowing holographic screen appears in front of him. He narrowed his eyes and said thoughtfully, He looks at the holographic screens and thinks about the being beyond the ordinary and the seal of the world. He stands in a hall surrounded by flying holographic screens, and in front of him lies a defeated enemy. He stands with a sword in his hand and ponders whether he will become transcendent and remain alone. He wonders if he will stay with the other guardians, while 2 mysterious and powerful allies stand behind him. He wonders if he will find a completely different path. He noticed a man in a blue suit approaching, shouting, "It!" and running towards him with a scroll in his hand. He puts on white gloves with a gold clasp, emphasizing the importance of the moment. He happily shows off a large scroll and enthusiastically demonstrates its contents. He bows politely and confirms with words that he is ready to serve his master. He explains that he disguised someone as a demon, while the other applauds back. Someone commented that everyone was looking great when the wooden planks flew apart with a loud bang. He is on his knees begging for mercy, while 2 men in suits look at him with cold indifference. He is trembling on his knees in armor, and the other one is asking who this man is, turning to 2 people standing nearby. He is puzzled at first, and then suddenly notices something important while looking at the red stone on his chest. He cries and prays, holding back strong emotions against the backdrop of the night sky and old houses. He smiles with a sneer, letting out a sinister laugh. He turns to Pesamut with a smile and evil eyes, hoping that he appreciated his gift. Lawrence leads the royal guard with spears under the direct command of Rolin, moving through the city at night. He stands in armor under the night sky and looks forward with a serious expression on his face. He blinked and smiled slightly, expressing mild surprise or interest. He is riding a horse and leading a squad of knights with their hands raised, ready to fight against the backdrop of a city at night. He announces that Pizamut's forces have arrived as another soldier listens to him against the night sky. One of the knights reports that they have found a survivor, another praises him for his good work, and a third supports his wounded comrade. The sounds of gunfire can be heard against the backdrop of the night sky and fire, but the characters in the image are not visible. He, in armor, thoughtfully asked if the item had really been stolen. He sits by the fire with a bowl in his hands and looks worried, as if he's thinking about something important. He fights by striking with his sword and looks confident of victory. He is wearing a spacesuit with a frightened expression on his face and is sweating, clearly experiencing severe stress or fear. He is sitting by the fire when a large sword is thrust into the ground next to him, causing him to be surprised. He clutched his sword and thought with despair that he could be a little faster. He grabbed another and exclaimed that he had risked his life to protect his boss, causing him to become frightened. He with white hair laughs loudly, hugging a worried man with blonde hair who is holding a cup with spilled liquid. He holds his helmet and looks ahead in surprise as other soldiers around him cry and wipe away tears. He panics and tells them that they have lost the battle while looking worried and tense. The image shows a building with a dome and columns against a clear sky. She stands in a bright greenhouse pavilion surrounded by flowers and sunbeams, heading towards a decorated gazebo. The knight in armor knelt down and announced that he was Lawrence, addressing those present. He clenched his teeth and sweated, expressing intense tension and internal struggle. She silently replied that she understood. She sits down at a table in the garden and reaches for her cup, ready to start a conversation. A hand abruptly places a cup on the table, creating a thumping sound. He apologizes to the master and asks to punish him, and he replies that now that object is important. He lands hard on the ground, creating a powerful impact. She orders to go to Pezimit and deliver a message. She orders to hand over that item. She smiles thoughtfully, and the inscription says that her name is Roland, and she is the demon queen of Rose. Against the backdrop of an observation tower with a flag, there's a sharp transition to a dark screen, creating a tense atmosphere. He noted with alarm that the situation was more complex than he had expected and began to explain his concerns. He is shocked to hear that the crazy woman was resurrected. He, with horns and wings, humbly agrees, confirming that everything is correct. She stands in the darkness with an ominous smile and red eyes, surrounded by purple smoke, radiating dangerous energy. He notices the return of the terrible woman in horror and expresses this in words. He is panicking with horns and slamming his fist on the table with great force, expressing strong emotions. He says that the woman broke into Off's domain alone and destroyed all of his subordinates. She threatens to chop off the head of a man with horns who is sweating and looking scared with a sinister smile. He is shaking and holding his shoulder, while another one from behind looks at him with concern. One of the women is surrounded by a purple aura. The nun with the bag of eggs is scared, and the third character is standing in front of them, taking a step forward. She stands with a chain in her hand and a dark aura appears behind her. And the speech says that since then, the demon kings call her differently. He says the name Margaret, Storm, and Destruction with tension, feeling the pressure of the situation. He cried out in panic, "Lord!" clutching the scrolls in his hand and expressing the urgency of the situation. He trembles nervously, holding the scroll, while the demon with horns looks at him in surprise. He, with horns and a black beard, trembles nervously and asks what kind of hysteria she is having, accepting a cup from another person. He looks at the sheet of paper with tension and fear, trembling and sweating with excitement. He screams in rage, wondering why she thinks he has that very item. He screams in pain, and another anxiously bandages his hand, while a third watches what is happening. He, with a horn on his forehead, reacts to something in surprise, expressing shock and bewilderment. He wonders thoughtfully why Roland would think they had that thing. He says with difficulty that they did not get any closer and lost Hex while pursuing Philip, suspecting Margaret's resurrection. She speaks with confidence about the sudden disappearance of that object and notes that the reason remains unclear, despite the known outcome. He is shocked and frightened, thinking that this cannot be. The text asks the question of whether there is someone behind all the events that are happening. He sighs loudly, expressing strong emotions or fatigue. He sneezed while sitting on his horse, which greatly surprised the animal. He looks worried when another asks if he is sick. The two are on horseback discussing plans to use Philip's body later as an undead servant. He grips the glowing object tightly in his hand, radiating determination and strength. A young man with a cloak recites the Golden Imperial Decree while holding a scroll, while another man on horseback watches him in the forest. The image shows a forest with bushes and trees. A ding sound is heard, but the characters are not visible. He thinks with surprise that he has Philip's body and the Imperial Golden Edict in his hands. He turned to another, calling him Piefenheim, to which he replied, "Yes, my lord." He reads something with a tense smile and a sweaty face, clearly experiencing internal excitement and trembling. He exclaimed that the world was now his, and the others supported him by proclaiming long life to Valorstead Valor as they rode their horses along the forest road. The piece of paper says that Elector Steel Philip was defeated, and next to it are smiling faces with the words, "You did a great job." The image shows a scroll with the golden seal of the empire, containing the official document of the elector's right to appoint the next emperor. 4 escorts guard a cart with 2 men inside as they travel along a forest road at night. They laugh together while discussing an economic topic, and one of them enthusiastically confirms what was said. He watches 3 people at a cart at night, one of whom is sitting next to another, and the third is standing next to him. He suddenly hit the blond man on the back, causing him to react sharply. He panics when he notices blood on his hand and realizes that something has gone wrong. The image shows a waving red flag with a black image of a winged lion and a sound that simulates the sound of the wind. He orders the area to be cleared while others fight the enemies in the rain. He strikes with his sword with great effort, and the 2 behind him prepare to support him in the fight. A man in armor with a sword fights decisively with 2 opponents, repelling their attacks in a dark forest. 2 men fight with swords, their blades clashing with sparks in an intense fight. He says with a smile and determination that he is not afraid and is ready for the upcoming battle. He exclaims with alarm, asking if the other person knows where they are, and is surprised that the action is happening right now. He attacks another in a cloak, who tries to defend himself with a sword, and a scream is heard. He inhales air with effort, feeling a strong gust of wind around him. He lets out a powerful scream, releasing a wave of energy from his mouth that tears apart the space in front of him. In the forest, 2 cloaked men hold the hands of wounded or unconscious people lying on the ground among scattered swords. He looms menacingly over another with his sword, saying that if he has a problem, he should complain to Walpurgis. He has red eyes and a hood and makes a threat, saying that if anyone comes near, he will kill. She gently touches his chest and he looks away shyly as they sit together on a couch in a room with bookshelves. He said with surprise that the injection was painful when a chopstick was touched to his cheek. She looks forward shyly and holds out something with her hand, without saying a word. She exclaimed joyfully that Valor had returned, and he recoiled in surprise. She and he are embarrassedly silent, not knowing what to say in an awkward situation. She is surprised and confused, trying to understand the situation that the interlocutor is talking about. Walpurgis is reported to have removed her helmet against the backdrop of a large building with a blue roof and a green forest. She abruptly puts the glass down on the table and starts screaming. One of the women jokes that at this pace she might have a heart attack, while the other smiles back. She says dreamily that youth is beautiful, while thoughtfully supporting her face with her hands. She speaks shyly, and he listens attentively, sitting on the couch in the room with bookshelves. He looks at her in surprise, and she laughs and says something funny, sitting next to him on the sofa in the library. She threatens to cut him in half, and he replies with fear, "Yes, ma'am." She sits with her arms and legs crossed, addressing Philip with a serious expression on her face. He orders a group of soldiers to take the soul, and they agree. She speaks with doubt and weariness about whether this will be a problem, crossing her arms and looking down. She says with bright eyes that she wants to be the one to finish the job with someone, expressing determination and tension. He stands and smiles nervously, sweating, as if trying to hide his embarrassment or awkwardness. He happily says that he has a gift and she is delighted and impatiently waiting for it. The image shows bags of gold coins glittering in the light, and an exclamation of surprise is heard. He smiles, looking down, and she asks in surprise what he said. She looks up with sparkling eyes and a blush on her face, with a drop of saliva on her lips, surrounded by gold coins and glitter. She suddenly froze, noticing something important, and her gaze became focused. He said it looked like letters while she was in a black dress and 2 others were looking at a bundle and a stack of papers. He holds several sheets of text in his hands and studies them carefully. The image shows two dark figures against a backdrop of thorns and roses, creating a contrast between the fiery and shadowy atmosphere. She reads the document and asks about the economic blockade, and he is surprised that she did not know about this order. A man in a white shirt furiously grabs a bag while another kicks a third, and an old man panics and tries to stop them. He looks up with a smile, clutching his sword, as hooded figures with weapons appear around him. She reads the letter out loud, and the other one anxiously tries to object to something. She appears tense and confused, with a stream of thoughts causing her inner unrest. He listens attentively as she begins to explain something with embarrassment, holding a piece of paper in her hands. She says that she will always be there, supporting and protecting the interlocutor. A deep sigh and a sound like a sudden movement of air are heard in the room. He looks ahead tensely, a bead of sweat on his face showing his excitement. A king summons a dragon to battle a tiger, while a man with a mustache comments on what's happening. He noticed the door opening with fear and suddenly turned towards it. Someone approaches Valor for tea, sitting at a table with a cup, teapot, and a plate of cookies and crackers. She sits on the bed and says that it had nothing to do with him in the first place. He gets excited and explains something, pointing his hand at himself. She looks down and says something is too big. She smiles and says she will feel something, expressing confidence and calmness. He looks at her with a thoughtful expression, as if trying to understand what was said. She is confident in Walpurgis's reliability and ponders this alone. She folded her hands thoughtfully, and in her mind she noted that she lacked experience and her heart was too soft. He holds her hand tenderly, wondering to himself why this happened. He smiles and says he won't give up that easily. She admitted that she can't forget him and wants to be with him despite all the difficulties. He admitted he wanted to help, addressing a seated woman with her hair pulled back. He clasped his hands on his knees and mentally declared that he wanted to be her support. He laughs and gives a thumbs-up sign of confidence and approval. She smiles and says that he is special and should not forget about it. He says with a grin that he is quite confident in himself, radiating self-satisfaction and a slight mockery. She became slightly embarrassed and began to speak, addressing her interlocutor. The image shows a majestic building with Gothic architecture against a blue sky and flying birds. He walks confidently across the tiled floor, looking ahead with concentration. He quickly runs down the corridor, while two hooded men watch him with concern. A man quickly runs towards two nuns who are preparing to meet him in the corridor. He shouts Mar's name sharply, expressing urgency and alarm. She eats a bun in surprise, holding several more in her hands, sitting on a sofa in a room with bookshelves and a window. He holds a shiny flask with an ornament in his hand, demonstrating its importance. She asks with sparkling eyes and a blush on her face if the other person is interested. He warns that if she opens it now, the reward will be doubled. He confidently raises his finger and begins to speak, holding a decorated object in his hand. She shouts, "Tea triples!" with enthusiasm, clenching her fist and showing determination. Roland, a demon king known as the Demon King of Roses, increases the number of demons sympathetic to humans through his policies. He asked Mar about the purpose of her gloves, standing in a room with bookshelves and light from the window. She laughs happily, surrounded by a mountain of gold coins, expressing delight at her wealth. He holds a mysterious object in his hand and says that now all it takes is a flick of the palm. He shows how to use the flask, saying that it should be done exactly like this. He, holding a strange object, said that he had never seen anything like it before, standing next to a black horse in the forest. He happily drinks from a bag of water and makes a contented sound. He receives a strong blow to the face from an unknown person, causing a splash of liquid and a violent reaction. He, sitting on his horse, said with a smile, "Oh dear," lifting the vessel with liquid. He looks with alarm at the irritated horse, which neighs loudly and raises its hoof. Amid festive balloons and flags, a crowd is seen entering the city of Plusen, greeted by a banner reading, "Welcome to the great city of Plusen." He stands in a crowd of people and looks worried as he watches what is happening around him. He stands in a dramatic pose in front of the horse, radiating confidence and magical energy, accompanied by lights and sounds around him. He looks at the huge queue at the amusement park where they announce that the wait time is 3 hours. He is surprised when he sees a man loudly announcing the city of the great and holding a sign that says, "I love Plusen." He speaks with a smile and a drop of sweat on his face about the place where they are. Two residents invite you to visit the tavern, telling you that Plusen is a city where different races live together. He explains that the Great One is the demon Cubalt, and the man says that her skin has been looking great lately. The narrator reports that Cobalt played an important role in unifying cultures through his knowledge and eloquence, and is considered the leading pro-human demon king after Roelin. He is determined that he must meet someone at any cost. He opened his eyes abruptly, expressing strong surprise or fear. A green-skinned man with purple hair happily greets another, who looks at him in surprise and asks what's going on. He asked if he knew him, and in response he heard that he didn't know, but his aura was too strong. He is surprised by the unusual aura, and asks if it is related to the skill, and the interlocutor asks if this is his first time in Plusen. He extends his hand forward, surrounded by a glow and a luminous symbol above his head, giving the impression of power and determination. He smiles and says that this might come in handy in the future. He says with delight that it looks like something outstanding, clenching his fists and with a shining look. The greenskin laughs as the one behind him uses magic to create glowing symbols in the air against the backdrop of the city's buildings. The image shows the castle of Cobalt against a backdrop of rocks and blue sky with no visible characters. In the hallway, sunlit doors with an elegant pattern remain closed. He announced that tea would be served soon, and the green-skinned man smiled, bowing his head. He is surprised to see that his great leader skill has risen to level 1 and wonders if the goblins have truly begun to acknowledge him. He sat in his chair, irritated, and said that he didn't care, and expressed his reluctance to discuss the matter. He looks with a smile at the amazed bust, which suddenly came to life and reacts with surprise. He is startled when the greenskin smiles and says that the tea has arrived, and then something crashes next to them. He apologizes for his sudden appearance, and the other asks to introduce himself in advance next time. He coughs awkwardly, holding the cup, and the green-skinned man smiles and says that he came to register his marriage with him. The green-skinned man sighs and says that it is so touching, and the other, sitting with a cup, thinks about repeating the situation. He is surprised to see a man holding a sign that says, "I love Plusen," and thinks that this man is the only one who calls him him. He resolutely offers to check the other, looking forward with concentration. He noticed the bell in surprise and showed the glowing ring on his finger. He sits with a cup of tea, and the other one, with outstretched arms, says that he invested 10 years of his salary into this. He asks with a smile, confirming what he heard, holding a cup of hot drink. He praised Cobalt for his impressive performance, holding a cup of steam as he looked at him with a smile. He, holding a cup, asks about the treasures and remarks that he is considered outstanding, turning to the woman sitting opposite. He says with a smile that they call themselves the Great One, and the greenskin listens in surprise. He smiles and says that the other person has sharp instincts. He confidently declared that he was the ruler of Plusen, surrounded by smoke and light. Cobalt, the Shadow King, introduces himself as the Demon King with a confident smile and a piercing gaze. He sits in a chair with a cup in his hand and confirms what he said with the word yes. He smiles and begins to speak, addressing his interlocutor. He carefully takes the cup by the handle. A ring with a red stone sparkles on his finger. He sits thoughtfully at a table in the library, arms folded and smiling, as if ready to share important information. He thinks with a grin that he expected this from Cobalt. A dark silhouette with glasses is surrounded by flying pages, and he says that the obsession with knowledge was evident even in the previous chapters. He accuses his interlocutor of being a known pervert who is willing to pay for information about the color of the Emperor's underwear. Knights are fighting in a battle, and one of them mentally claims that he knows all the important information. He stands in a cloak with a dark face and glowing eyes and talks about the transition from future military targets to speculation in the real estate market. He claims with a sinister smile that he knows everything and is ready to name any information. She smiles confidently, leaning on her folded gloved hands. He attacks aggressively with his sword, while the other, surrounded by light, asks to become his friend. He is a little nervous and tries to hide his excitement while in a room with a mysterious atmosphere. He walks away in his cloak, and the other notices that he has become the center of attention, while the two watch with surprise and interest. He sheepishly asks if they are really close, looking at Walpurgis and the other man, who are hugging tenderly. He smiles and says he understands, against the backdrop of blooming pink flowers. He asks doubtfully if they are really friends, expressing uncertainty and anxiety. He shows a glowing object in his hand, smiling and saying something important. The ring emits a blue glow and hovers above the palm, surrounded by mystical smoke. He thinks that someone will smile and lecture, and say that they should have studied harder while they sit at the table, one with his head in his hands, the other under him. He remembers with tension that he was told to study harder, and he says the word friends with doubt. He thoughtfully says that now, as a sign of friendship, he will share useful information. He snaps his fingers, revealing a ring with a red stone in a room with bookshelves in the background. He asked what it was, and she, sitting at the table, pointed her finger, waiting for an explanation. He says something confident and important with a smile and a raised finger. The image shows a cityscape with historic buildings and a clock tower against a backdrop of mountains. Two guards at the gate noticed the stranger approaching, who took a step forward. The knight in the helmet asked in surprise who was in front of him, while another stood nearby in the hall with metal walls. He smiles and announces that the leadership skill has been activated, accompanied by a ding sound. He creates an energy shield that makes the two armored men bounce back, cowering in pain and fear. He warns not to use the skill Great Leader's Dignity, which has been activated. He clenches his fists and warns that no one should block his path. He stares intently at the holographic screen in front of him, not saying a word. Two men look at a blue screen that suddenly appears in front of them in confusion. A man screams in panic for protection, as another man with a cloaked shield flies towards him, and a woman falls to the ground with apples scattered. Several people knelt down and laid their heads on the ground in a gesture of submission or apology. He orders us to move with a sinister smile, surrounded by a mystical blue glow. A cry was heard from the building, directed at the head of the Merchants Guild. A woman runs into the room and screams, and a man in a fur hat turns around in surprise. She is shaking and looks scared, clearly worried about something unexpected. She runs in panic and someone tries to grab her, causing her to become scared and tense. He stands opposite a man in a fur coat who is shaking with fear, and he quietly laughs at him. He anxiously communicates impending danger by sweating and expressing serious concern. He stands with his back turned and uses magic to create a glowing barrier or symbol in the air in front of him. He turns to the head of the Merchants Guild with a sinister smile, calling him by his title. Kubalt, an idealistic demon king, is known for his exceptional intelligence and support of people, second only to Roalian. He asked in surprise if this was Dresden in front of him. He raises his cup of tea with a smile in the elegant room, preparing to say something. He is on the tower fishing for money while the crowd below reaches out to them with their hands raised. He noticed something important with surprise, expressing shock and bewilderment. He sits at the table with a cup in his hands and thinks that Kubalt has lived up to expectations. He recalls that it was this man who had suppressed him in the information war through many past clashes. Birds carry letters and horsemen race along the road, showing that his intelligence network spans the continent. He introduced himself with a mysterious smile as Kubalt, the Shadow King, against the backdrop of galloping horsemen. He sits at the table with a cup in his hands and says that there is one thing that cannot be revealed. He looks at his interlocutor in surprise when he asks him to do something one more time. He looks closely at the sleeping girl in the bed, while another man stands next to him with a slight smile on his face. He places his hand on the woman's forehead with her eyes closed, checking her condition. He says something with a slight smile, looking down. She smiles as she recalls recent events as she runs among the trees and falling leaves. The maid called out in fear to the young lady, who was holding a fork with a trembling hand, and tears were streaming from her eyes. He said that all the famous doctors from all over the continent were called, while the other listened with tension and then answered. He cries, covering his face with his hands, while the other one watches him with a thoughtful expression. He says with tension and tears in his eyes that he can't stand this situation any longer. He is in shock and screaming, clenching his fists, reacting to something unexpected. Man with tears in his eyes asks for the return of an unusual adventurer. He touches his head with surprise and tears in his eyes, expressing strong emotions. He complained about bad breath, and the other one apologized for it, visibly embarrassed. He clenched his fist in front of his face and thought hard, preparing for the test ahead. He placed his other hand on her forehead, checking her temperature, and she flinched slightly at the touch. She lies with her eyes closed and sweats, and someone says that this cannot be treated with regular medications. He says there is a way out of this situation. He is in a panic and in tears, breathing heavily, and it seems like he is urgently trying to say something. He calls Glockner, who listens in surprise. He noticed that his hand began to shake and became scared. The man kicked the ground with surprise and determination, confirming that Gross Glockner was just such a person. He laughs and says that he will fulfill the wish, and the other one reacts to his words with tension and pain. The image shows a purple mountain landscape with sharp rocks and trees in the foreground. In the darkness, an eye glows purple and radiates magical energy. The image shows an ancient dragon surrounded by mystical fire against the backdrop of the moon, with text about the rarity of such creatures on the continent. He possesses immeasurable power that even demon kings cannot easily deal with. He with a sword in his hands and she with a staff look in fear at the demons with red eyes surrounding them. He holds his head and cries, experiencing intense internal suffering. He says with a smile that this is for ordinary people. He squeezes the hand of another man, holding a blue stone in a gold frame in his glove. He assures the other not to worry and says he will go himself. He looks at himself with admiration in his new clothes, shining and decorated with patterns. He smiles with confidence and a notification appears that the skill Mephistopheles acting has been activated. He grabbed the other by the clothes and shouted, expressing strong emotions and threats in the conversation. He tells the older man that his daughter needs the most important thing right now while she lies unconscious. He holds back tears, holding his hand on his chest, expressing deep feelings and inner struggle. He cries so hard that water comes out of his eyes, trying to contain his emotions. He touches his lips with a grin and begins to speak, showing some play and tension in his voice. He puts his hand to his chest and says, "Ah," feeling weak as the other man looks up at him. He looks up with surprise and alarm, as if he had heard something unexpected and important. The young man confidently said that he would take it upon himself, causing surprise and tears in the man with the mustache. He grabbed the leader of the merchant guild and shouted at him. He says he's doing it for his one and only. He cries and trembles, expressing intense fear and despair. She lies in bed with tears in her eyes and has difficulty saying the word daddy. She smiles and tenderly calls for her dad, holding a sleeping cat in her arms, surrounded by flowers and glow. She says with a smile that when she grows up, she plans to marry him, surrounded by flowers. He cries and struggles to say, "All right," expressing strong emotions and an internal struggle. He exclaimed joyfully that it was a perfect moonlit night for climbing, and his horse looked tense next to him. He clutches a flower in his hand, from which a green glow emanates, preparing for action. He shows the flower to the horse and asks if she knows what it is. The animal clenched its teeth in response to a flower that was emitting light and causing it to become tense. He smiles and tells the horse to eat, calling it by its name, Philly. He thanks the red-eyed guards for keeping the place so secure. He screams with a horse head, and she declares that evil people and demons will not be able to pass, while a notification appears about increasing Philly's stats. He explains that the herb with the demon dragon's mana is considered a rare medicine outside of this place. He clenches his fist on the ground, surrounded by green light and sparks. He says with delight that even a handful of dirt around is a real treasure. He quickly finds and reports that there are medicinal herbs here. He holds in his hand glowing green herbs surrounded by a sparkling magical glow. He chews the grass contentedly, holding it in his hand, and seems to enjoy the process. He is suddenly hit on the head when a rock flies from behind. He turned around abruptly with an expression of anger and tension on his face. An orc with fangs and a necklace of bones threateningly tells someone to leave. He cried out sharply in surprise or pain. He stands before a crowd of evil creatures with red eyes, preparing for the upcoming battle. A goblin with red eyes declares that this land belongs to them, and other goblins follow him with threatening looks. The image contains text describing the Grossglockner Canyon, its height, the territory's ownership by the demonic dragon, and the danger to creatures without its permission. Night, the moon shines over the forest. A long sound is heard, conveying an atmosphere of silence and mystery. A purple-eyed goblin carefully pulls out a plant, while another one nearby nervously rubs his eye as other creatures stand around them and watch. A man in glasses calmly drinks through a straw, while another man dressed as a waiter serves him a drink. He digs hard into the ground with a knife, surrounded by glowing green particles in a dark place. He opened his eyes abruptly, surprised to see something in front of him. He yells at the group to dig properly as they work in the dark. He enthusiastically demonstrates the plant on the tablet, accompanied by energetic sounds. Several creatures with purple eyes and pointed ears listen intently to the growling, surrounded by glowing particles in the night forest. He screams with rage and intensity, expressing strong emotions. Several creatures with red eyes and sharp teeth approach angrily, making growling sounds. He gave a sharp start and clenched his hand tensely, expressing fear and alarm. He defends himself from the attack of creatures with red eyes that quickly attack him in the dark. He activates the skill, surrounded by blue flames, preparing to act. He looks intently, his eyes glowing with energy, as if preparing for an important action. He uses the ability Blood Tear Absorption, absorbing blood and attacking enemies with bloody tentacles. The image shows a quick hand movement accompanied by a sound effect, with no visible characters or dialogue. He uses dark magic with confidence, surrounded by mystical energy and shadows. He asked ironically why they were getting into a fight while his absorb blood tears skill had increased. He smiles and says, "Rise," summoning dark energies around him. A dark entity with a purple light awakens or regenerates on the ground, surrounded by mystical energy and shards. Two creatures with purple eyes and evil expressions radiate dark energy surrounded by green sparks. Several creatures with purple glowing eyes and evil expressions are surrounded by a mystical aura, creating an atmosphere of menace and dark magic. He smiles and claps his hands, radiating confidence and joy in the nighttime environment. The glass of the drink glitters against the night sky, creating an atmosphere of anticipation and celebration. He laughs cheerfully with a glass in his hand, and another man stands nearby, watching him. He quietly said with purple eyes to forget about it. He's in a suit apologizing, and another one is pointing at him with a gloved index finger. He lists werewolves, worms, and giant centipedes against the backdrop of their terrifying images. He warns of the many ogres that are also present. He snaps his fingers with a smile, while another stands next to him, bowing in respect. He quickly snaps his fingers, making a bright sound. He holds a fork and listens as someone says that he sounds sharp, referring to him as Valor. He greets everyone with a smile to the great city of Plusen, pointing to a poster that says, "Welcome to the great city of Plusen." A fork pierces a tomato on a plate, causing juice to splatter. He looks at the tomato on his fork with a serious expression, clearly having doubts before eating it. He looks at the sky and says the moon is beautiful. He suggested attending the event if he had time, and the other person replied that he would drop by if possible. He stands on the balcony at night, holding a glowing object in his hand and smiling, with balloons fluttering around him. The image shows an envelope with a note about the payment of compensation in the amount of 100,000 florins. The man with red eyes handed the scroll to the helmeted warrior and said it was for Roland, while in the shadows, a figure with a red eye watched. He stands leaning back in his chair and says that you can be sure that this is just the beginning. He asks to tell her to behave in a coordinated manner, as if she accepts the conditions, and advises to buy as much time as possible. He smiles, looking at the cup of steam, preparing to say something. He puts on his glasses with a smile, while a green-skinned man in a suit watches him with concern. He laughs and says he's already looking forward to it, adding that Gross Glockner is considered a gold mine. He smiles and wears glasses, saying that we can look forward to the upcoming event. He says with a serious expression that he will let his interlocutor go and asks in surprise in response to the reaction. He looks around tensely, noticing a dark man with purple eyes who suddenly appears behind him in the night forest. He, wearing glasses, suddenly leans back, and the other, frightened, tries to hold him back and exclaims, "My master!" He asks, wearing glasses, what all the fuss is about and inquires whether the other person needs a bathroom. He takes off his sunglasses and looks forward, expressing confidence and determination. The image shows the moment of a strong impact or collision, accompanied by sound effects. He sits in a chair and another stands next to him as armed figures with clubs approach around them. A huge ogre with red eyes and fangs appears in front of them, causing one of the characters to exclaim in fear. He orders a retreat, while the other insists on the need to protect him, despite the threat from the two huge creatures. He delivers a powerful blow to the opponent's chest, which makes a painful sound. He turned his head sharply when he heard a loud sound next to him. The two creatures mock the fact that all their opponents have already been defeated, calling it pathetic. He ponders his current level of absorb blood tear skill, while two red-eyed orcs growl angrily next to him. The monster resists the blood tears absorption skill, and he thinks that the goblins don't stand a chance. He muses that summoning the undead won't help, as they'll just turn into the same as these goblins. He activates a glowing artifact on his hand that emits powerful energy. He thought ironically that everything had turned out great, expressing disappointment. He concentratingly summons a magic circle, preparing to attack or cast a spell in a tense atmosphere. The image shows the moment someone decides to stretch a bit, accompanied by a fire effect and a tap sound. He releases a powerful energy blast from his hand, surrounded by bright flames and light. He controls the flame with concentration, radiating confidence and strength. It touches one of the 12 legendary swords of the Empire, called the indestructible treasure of the House of Finger. He clutches a sword from which a bright golden energy bursts out, illuminating everything around with a powerful light. He holds the glowing sword, surrounded by magical energy, with determination, and casts the spell Rublanya. 3 orcs with red eyes and evil smiles are surrounded by glowing streams of energy, preparing to fight or attack. He says with a smile that this sword is exclusive, showing it off with a shining blade and images of animals. He holds the sword and says he just locked it in the vault. The image shows the text Final Shadow Sword Art on a background with vertical lines. The whirlwind and glowing sword create a tense atmosphere before a possible battle or powerful blow. 2 orcs with red eyes fight. One of them screams in pain after being hit in the neck. 2 orcs with red eyes are fighting. One of them is wounded and growls in pain. He quickly charges at 2 orcs who roar in response, preparing for battle. He quickly attacks the 2 green monsters using a series of rapid sword strikes. He screams with rage and intensity, his eyes glowing red and his fangs bared in a menacing grin. The huge monsters fight. One of them screams in pain as it takes a powerful blow, flying into blood and darkness. He stands on the head of a huge green creature with a sword in his hand, surrounded by the bodies of defeated enemies under the starry sky. An orc with red eyes and fangs reacts with fear to a sudden blow to the head. He delivers a powerful blow with his sword to the green creature's back, piercing it and causing it to bleed. He prepares to attack with concentration, surrounded by energy streams and glowing particles. One man calls out in panic to another, whom he calls "My Lord," as a wounded creature with blood on its back is seen in the background. He noted with relief that the technique worked, admitting that he hadn't used it for a long time and was worried. He laughs nervously and sweats as he tries to explain the situation. He looks up with a smile and a drop of sweat on his face, expressing slight confusion or awkwardness. He watches in his hood as another jokes that the Lord has a longer nose than him, standing among his fallen enemies. Someone asked if what he did was his own doing. He turned around abruptly, noticing something unexpected behind him. The masked man asked the other sharply what he was doing, demanding an explanation, and the other responded with surprise. He attacks the enemy with a sword in his hands and is surprised when she managed to do something. The scene depicts a powerful clawed paw surrounded by lightning and energy, creating the effect of a sudden and powerful blow. He clenched his teeth and barely held back the pain. A bead of sweat ran down his face and blood came out of his mouth. She's in the form of a demon with horns and wings, surrounded by a purple glow, preparing for battle or uttering a threat. She threatens to break her opponent's neck, expressing rage and determination. She, with her horns, concentrates on delivering a powerful blow, surrounded by energy flows and light effects. He attacks a red-winged creature that delivers a powerful blow, knocking him down in the night forest. He took a big hit and his health dropped to 10%. He thinks with pain and disbelief that he was struck down with one blow to the last fragment. He says, "You," as his purple glowing claw touches the ground, causing a crackling sound and sparks. He and the green creature watch an ominous shadow with red eyes, surrounded by a purple glow, floating in the air against the night sky. He grins and asks the green-skinned man with the glowing eye who he is, while he looks scared and sweats. He has red eyes and scaly skin and addresses someone, calling him Master. He looks at the many question marks in front of him with distrust and doubt. The image shows a sinister dragon with glowing eyes and sharp horns against a backdrop of fiery flames and the inscription, "Master of Glosklockner." A dragon demon appears before them, and someone is surprised by his appearance and manner of speech. He realized with surprise that in the last run, there had been a giant dragon all along, and his companion was calling out to him anxiously. He speaks with a smile and sharp teeth, surrounded by a mystical purple glow and green sparks on a dark background. He retreats in horror before the demonic girl, while the other watches what is happening with alarm. With its horns and evil gaze, it radiates energy, preparing to attack or defend itself in a tense situation. He senses energy from another dimension, while the other, surrounded by blue light, listens to his words with anxiety. He panics and asks why the self-proclaimed lizard is breaking the fourth wall while another one watches him with concern. He shows his clawed hand surrounded by a purple glow and says the word dialogue. She, surrounded by a purple glow, raises a huge clawed hand, preparing to attack in a dark space with green sparks. He abruptly stopped the other one, who was trying to run away in panic, expressing fear and tension. She raises her hand with claws to the sky, where the moon shines and a mystical glow shines around her. The image shows the moment of a powerful fall or impact, accompanied by the effect of speed and energy emanating from the red creature. He struggles to fight off the demonic girl attacking him, while the man in the suit watches in horror. He looks into the eyes of his opponent, tensely clenching his teeth, and the opponent responds with a bright light from his claw, causing alarm in the first. She stares ahead tensely, trying to concentrate and cope with the situation, despite her noticeable anxiety. He stood up, demanding an explanation, while the demoness with horns and a tail stood in front of him and another man watched from behind. He raises his finger with a grin and a drop of sweat on his face, as if he's about to say something important. He states that the demon dragon dies a painful death amidst a bright red light and blood. He transforms into a terrifying creature, surrounded by blood-red light and shadows, creating an atmosphere of horror and destruction. She has horns and red hair, looks alert and listens attentively, as if something unexpected has caught her attention. He, sweating and smiling, made a gesture with his fingers at his temple, showing determination in a dark place. She looks forward thoughtfully, surrounded by shimmering green particles in the dark space. He defends himself from a sudden attack by a demonic girl with horns and claws who raised her hand to hit him. He says, but thoughtfully, looking away, surrounded by a dark atmosphere with green sparks. A red-haired girl with horns attacks a man, screaming, and he looks at her in surprise. He stands against the dark cave with a tense smile and a sweaty face, expressing a mixture of surprise and alarm. He removes a red, scaly glove with claws from his hand, radiating energy. She places her hand on the head of a man sitting on the ground who looks tense and focused. He looks intently, expressing determination and inner strength, preparing for the upcoming test. He smiles tensely and sweats against the backdrop of a dark forest with flickering green lights. He is kneeling, and she, in a red suit, puts her hand on his head while a third one watches from the ground in the dark forest. She holds out her hand in concentration, surrounded by a glowing aura and energy, as if preparing to use power or magic. He floats in space with long hair and a tail, surrounded by glowing balls and ribbons, making sounds of surprise. He yells, "Overload!" and she replies that it's nothing important. She says that viewing and memory are necessary, and he objects that it is not necessary. She pointed to a part of the sphere and said that it was enough for their purpose. She reacted nervously to the accusation of suspicion, laughing and expressing disbelief. The image shows a huge dragon with red scales and horns lying on the ground in a dark cave environment. She, with horns and red eyes, looks up tensely and says that this is enough. He falls down surrounded by a powerful energy wave and sound effects. He breathes heavily and tries to rise while a creature with horns and wings watches him from afar. He points ahead tensely and warns of impending danger. He thought the situation was dangerous, and if he continued, he would touch on memories from other attempts. She looks at her hands with concern and wonders who is behind this, trying to understand the situation. He is alarmed to realize that his face is beginning to crack, which causes him great anxiety. He watches as a woman with a horn and a red suit makes hand gestures, expressing displeasure. She, with horns and red hair, looks back, expressing calmness and determination. He smiles at the horned demon standing before him, clearly confident and ready to fight. He says the name is too long and suggests calling her just Shubi, causing her to react with irritation. He stands in a suit against the night sky, looking worried, with a bead of sweat on his face. He slapped his fist on the shield with a grin, showing confidence and strength. She screams in rage that Shubi refuses, expressing strong resistance. They argue about the language of the MZ generation. One demands to accept it, another calls it nonsense, and the third resolutely refuses. A notification about a new quest, Dragon's Trust, and a warning about the game's difficulty increasing appears on the screen. In the dark forest, fireflies flicker among the trees, creating a mysterious and calm atmosphere at night. In the forest at night, a snake cautiously stuck out its tongue, sensing the presence of something nearby. He kicks, injuring the snake that tries to bite him. He speaks the words of the master of the abyss, deeper than darkness and the king of chaos and disorder, standing in the forest among the falling leaves. He clenches his fist and declares that his name is none other than... One character with horns loudly calls himself the Great Demon King Outcast, while another in a lizard-headed costume addresses him in surprise. He recognized his interlocutor with a smile and said that it was him. An armored woman with long blonde hair walks along a forest path, and someone calls her Callion. She is wearing armor with a horned helmet, clenching her fist, preparing for action in the forest. He asks for his wish to be granted, and the armored woman thanks him while the creature in the suit watches them. He has horns and a third eye and laughs and says that you shouldn't underestimate his power. He has a third eye on his forehead and horns and smiles, expressing confidence and audacity. He announces that they are now heading to the Grossglockner, guarded by a demon dragon. He says that the beasts under the creature's control are nothing special, addressing a dark demon with a chain and flaming eyes. He has a third eye on his forehead and a horn on his head, holds a staff and confidently looks forward, making a sound similar to her. He, in armor, looks in horror at the demon with horns and red eyes, who is approaching menacingly, surrounded by ominous flames. Two monsters with red eyes and sharp teeth stare menacingly forward, emitting ominous energy in the dark forest. Ogdash, the demon king of greed and third in rank, smiles as he prepares for battle, clutching the hilt of his weapon. He claimed that it belonged to him. At night, loud sounds of gunshots or explosions are heard in the forest, accompanied by luminous effects among the trees. He is surrounded by green energy and symbols with a staff in his hands, preparing for battle with a determined expression on his face. He gives the order to act, surrounded by sinister creatures with horns and dark faces ready to attack. A man with a third eye and horns walks confidently forward, holding a staff. Green energy hovers around him, and a dark figure is visible behind him. The image shows a dragon guarding the Grossglockner, which despises humans and demons, and a girl with horns watching over it.